Hey there, boys and ghouls. Welcome to this week's episode of Hollow Weekly, and boy, do we got a good one for you this week. George and I had the chance to sit down with Aaron B. Koontz of Scare Package. Yes, that Scare Package, the one that knocked your socks off during the last drive-in. We thought we got to talk to this guy, so we did. But we talked behind the scenes of Scare Package and his upcoming film, The Pale Door, which comes out August 21st. So go ahead and tell us, hey Siri, set a reminder for August 21st for The Pale Door. I was going to see if mine did it. She didn't. But I'll set the reminder, and you should too. Also, make sure to check out the show notes. We have a ton of cool links in there. Scare Package merch, and then Aaron also gave us the names of all of his good friends that have these amazing short horror stuff. So if you're like me and you need more short horror, and Scare Package gave you that little boost of energy, and you need a little bit more, check out the show notes. You will not be disappointed. Enjoy the interview.
I am so excited to talk about Scare Package for a minute because this. So first of all, let me put my cards on the table because I'm gonna come at this from a weird angle a little bit, right? I was so rooting for Mike to be a new horror icon, right? I know Chad was breakout and all that stuff, like whatever, but I was so invested in Mike for some reason. I don't know why that character was whatever, but it was kind of amazing to me because he like when you have that concept of a horror anthology and it's comedic, and it felt like it was comedic all the way through, which I'm not sure I've seen anywhere else, right? But like that was, it was amazing to watch that. But to get that concept to work, you got to crack it open and come out the other side of it. And he was totally doing that as a character, which was amazing.
Oh, that's so, I love that you said that so much. His name's John Michael Simpson. Mm-hmm. He's just an absolutely wonderful person. He actually hadn't even seen the movie till the night that it premiered on the last drive-in.
Okay.
But so what's interesting, so he's a comedic guy, had done some I don't know if he did stand-up, but he did a little, improv work in Austin. And Emily Higgins, who directed that segment, Cold Open, originally I was like, when I read her segment, I was like, hey, who'd be great? And I suggested Sam from the wraparound, Byron Brown. I was like, oh, he could be really funny as this. And she's like, actually, I have this perfect guy. And then when I saw his clips, I was like, oh, I see this. And I didn't know John Michael before that. And then when she wrote that segment, it wasn't, we didn't ask her to write a cold open. It just, she wrote something about cold opens. I was like, well, then that has to be our cold open. That makes perfect sense.
Right.
And then I fell in love with him. I fell in love with Mike Myers' character.
Yep.
I fell in love with John Michael. He's so affable and just so likable. And there was so much about him.
Yep.
So then we wrote him into more stuff. So he was not intended to kind of come full circle the way that he did.
Oh,
I
so cool.
loved the way that he did that. And he's like, I just want to come back at the end and rescue the good guys,
Yes.
and all this. And I'm like, well, then he has to do that.
What felt incredible to me, so I'm trying to imagine it being in the shoes of someone who's trying to coordinate, because I want to ask you about the architecture of this, because how you did the overlapping stories and all that stuff is just amazing. But, to juggle all these segments and all of these overlapping where they kind of stand alone but also touch each other and all that stuff, and to have the movie end on someone who just comes in, shows up on screen and goes, I'm going to do my job. Must be so relaxing to someone who, like you, who's trying to juggle all this stuff. Like, what's better than a character that just does their job and gets
That's
out?
so funny.
Right?
No, that's so funny. I didn't even think of it that way, but it's kind of like a funny way of, because it wasn't even the original ending. The original ending was, and actually on the Blu-ray on October 20th, is there's the original ending will exist. And we even labeled it, like I told them we're making, sorry, I'm on a side here, but I'm king of tangent, so that's just going to happen.
That's fine, please.
But like when we were doing the Blu-ray stuff, I'm like, okay, we'll have these bonus features. And it's like, I can't just put normal bonus features on this movie. They have to be self-referential. So the tag is, it's like original, not as good ending.
That's
listed
That's so
on
good.
the Blu-ray. And then there's a commentary track, and it's like, I'm probably going to fuck this up, but it's creators commenting on the film that comments on other films with better commentary tracks.
That's awesome.
And I pitched it to them. They're like, well, we don't know how we're going to fit that. I'm like, let's just make it fit. We got to make it fit.
No.
Sorry, I'm an auteur. This is important.
Yep.
You know, and no, they were super cool about it.
Oh, you absolutely have to, like, because there's so many layers that happen in the movie where there's that moment where it's Chad where he's like, "You're not ready for primetime, kid." People talking about a movie in a movie in a movie.
Yeah, that was me talking to the audience saying, like, here's the deal: if you don't like meta, get the fuck out.
Right.
Get out now, because we're just gonna spray you with this shit.
I love that you're chasing people out at the beginning.
I mean, well, I don't hopefully want that, but
but keep the right.
I know, look, I'm a diehard horror fan. I know plenty who have issues with horror comedy as a whole, and I know some who just do not like meta.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, if this is your thing, if that's not your thing, it's probably not going to be your movie, and that's okay. Right. I got you to start playing it. That's what kind of matters for the most part. Maybe rent it, you know, once it comes to VOD. But, you know, Shudder likes the plays. They like to start in the plays. So like, we got to start. But then after that, you know, it's like kind of a hint that's like, this might not be for you then.
Well, I love how the meta even like reaches outside the film. Like I was listening to the soundtrack, even the track list. I was going through and I was like, hey, wait a minute, the final kill, the final kill, the final kill. And I was like, oh, this is great. Even the soundtrack still pulls you in.
That's so good.
Well, the original title of the movie was Tropes. So where this all kind of came from is so Cameron Burns is my co-writer. I have a company, Paper Street Pictures, and we make movies. And we had made a first film that was like a really difficult process. It didn't like go the way we wanted. The movie is not my version of it. Like what's out there is like some weird cut that we did that we thought was only for TV and airlines. And it's like the cut that's out to the world. And so that was really frustrating. And we were like, let's just get back to what we love. And we had toured and played a bunch of festivals with a bunch of people and just found all these folks that we loved and some that we kind of knew but wanted to get to know better and wanted excuses to work with. So Cameron was like, an anthology, like that's the way to do it. You know, we could work with all these people. We could also spread out the money, like pay for it over time. And you know, as we were going to raise it independently. So I was like, okay, there's something to that. But like, I didn't want to do an anthology because there were too many great ones already. I thought like VHS 2 and Southbound. And I knew that Shudder was doing the new Creep Show. And I'm like, why the fuck are we competing with that? Like, that doesn't, like we don't have the budget. We don't have the scope, you know, like I'm not that good. So how do we do that? And so, but he kept pushing it because that's what Cameron does. And that weekend I was like, fine, I'll watch all these anthologies. I'm a little OCD, and I made this like spreadsheet of, you know, kind of highs and lows, pros and cons of every anthology. Right. And I mean, I watched fucking everything. Wow. There are so many anthologies on Amazon Prime, by the way. And what's crazy too, the same shorts appear in like 7 different anthologies.
That's crazy.
No way.
So that was the first thing. I was like, well, number one, 100% everything's unique. We're not going to just license films. Again, I know some folks who have done that. Great folks. Sure. Not for me. That's not for me. I wanted something 100% original. And then on top of that, there was going to be, I knew that we needed a hook, something that was different. I was like, we can't just, you know, our scope is not going to be able to be as large. So what I realized is I love the comedies. So when you said you hadn't really seen a comedy one, that's because they don't exist. Nice. There is not a horror comedy anthology that is all horror or all
that's comedy, all the way through. Yep.
Yeah, all the way through. There's some that like tinge, you know, Creep Show has that vibe. Creep Show 2 gets a little more of that vibe.
Yeah, Body Bags has some fun moments.
A little bit. Tales of Halloween. But what happens is you watch this like a really funny, great segment, and then you go to this wraparound that's like, I don't really know what's happening. Just get me to the next segment. Just like skip that. Get me to the next segment. Yep. Then you get to the next segment, and it's this really awesome, you know, horror thing. But it's like, but wait a second. I'm like kind of off kilter, and I'm not vibing with this the right way. And at least for me, like that happened. And look, like ABC's of Death, I think is one of the best examples of that. And I don't want to speak ill about any movie. I love ABC's of Death. I'm fans of the filmmakers and what they've done. But I just felt like tonally had some of those ups and downs that made it a little harder where like, if I rewatch it, I know which ones to skip to.
Yep.
And I didn't want that. I wanted something that kind of felt, and now look, comedy has different angles. Like it's not, there's over the top, there's subtle, there's dark humor, there's all this. But I was like, look, if it's all horror comedy, that's unique. I haven't seen it. And then I said, what I like is let's do tropes. So every segment is making fun of a different horror trope.
Right.
And I was like, that's fun. Like, that's a fun idea. Yep. But then it also had to be, you know, if we're going to make fun of horror, we also have to kind of bear hug it at the same time. Like, it can't be punching down. No, if you're a scary movie fan, no offense, but like that, I feel like punches down at horror a lot.
Yep.
And it's like, we're above horror, but we'll write this kind of like horror thing
Sure.
for you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
like laugh at.
Yep.
And even though I laugh at Scary Movie, don't get me wrong, there's plenty that I laugh at. Like Scary Movie 3, I think in particular is kind of really funny.
Right.
But it just didn't come from this place of like love. Cause like, I mean, I got horror tattoos, Friday 13th. I mean, like,
Wow.
this is my world. This is
Yep.
all, I'm the kid who argued about who would win in fights between Jason and Freddy and all this stuff. And
Yep.
I was kind of Sam and Rad Chad in a way, like in some aspects. I worked in video stores. Like, this was my life.
Yep.
So if I'm doing it from a place of love, because it's what I love.
Yep.
So put all that together, and I was like, okay, tropes, horror comedy, and then the big realization was I wanted the wraparound to be unique. I wanted the wraparound to stand alone on its own story.
Yep.
I wanted us to go in and out of the segments in different ways.
Right.
Like, I didn't want the easy answer was every time I read a review and they're like, oh, and the segments are just putting in a new tape. I'm like, no, they're not. Some
No.
like a couple are, but I
No,
deliberately was like, the first segment just opens. Like,
Yep.
there's no opening credits. There's no anything. It's just, the sound, jump scare kind of sound.
Yep.
And then it's like the, last drive-in looking pole, that's
Yep.
there. And that's it. And you're off and running. And then you come out of that segment and he's reading a script. Then another segment we're pantomiming in and out of the segment, and then there's like one that's like a tape or, looking at a tape or some other stuff. But like
No, I
was
love
meant-
how you come out of the goo segment. I love
Oh, yeah,
splashing
yeah.
himself with the I mean, because it kind of retroactively gives you a flavor of what you just watched. Because what you realized is you were watching this amazing special effect gore fest, but it was a story. It was a campfire story being related in a video store by a guy like doing that, and that's just such a magic touch. Like, yeah,
It's so funny to picture what Sam and Han were doing. If you try to imagine the whole segment
totally.
of what they were doing,
Yep.
like, because that's what makes it even funnier to me.
Yep.
And but yeah, that was actually the last thing we ever shot. Was that well, except for the new ending, but that was the last thing we ever shot. It was like a weirdly emotional moment, but it was like such a silly thing.
Sure.
And after I'm like, oh my god, like we're finishing this up now, But I love that. Like, that was fun.
It's weird you say that because there was like a weird emotion flying around in that segment, and I was trying to figure out the tropes. Like, I know the movie's playing with tropes, but then it would take me by surprise where the tropes showed up, right? So like,
Yeah.
there was this moment where I realized I felt like I was getting a Cronenberg the Fly trope when the goo guy was like, my eyes are going to fall out, but he was also really sympathetic. So he's talking like,
Yeah.
put me back together. I don't want to come back incomplete. But it's in the middle of the woods. I've never seen like the Fly trope in broad daylight. They're always in a lab or a claustrophobic area.
Well, I mean, first off, credit to Chris McEnroy. Chris McEnroy is an absolute genius. That's who wrote and directed that segment. When we were talking, I mean, one of the themes that we had from the beginning, kind of coming back from that OCD weekend I had,
Mhm.
one of the other rules that I had was, well, like I said, that the wraparound has to be cohesive. It stand on its own. So even if you don't watch the other segments, there's one cohesive story that has a beginning, a middle, and end.
Yep.
So that had to happen. And I wanted you to care. After you left a segment, you could watch this great segment, and then you're like, oh, I'm fun. It's fun to be back here again for a minute. And then maybe you don't even want to leave. You're like,
Right.
oh, no, I want to keep going. But that's the idea, is to like do these teasers and get you there. But then the other big piece was it was horror with heart. Like, we just wanted this to have heart. It wasn't really meant to be scary. It was just meant to be fun.
Right.
And like I said, come from this good place. And I think Emily and Chris, well, everybody nailed it. But like the first two segments in particular, I think just really have that, because you can see how much, there's a lot of heart in like John Michael's character, like we were talking about,
Yep.
and Mike Myers. But then, yeah, I mean, Chris, when he first was pitching me, he's like, well, why don't we just do something that's just like in the woods, and like every fucking thing that happens in a horror movie in the woods. And like, we kept talking. I'm like, dude, just throw more.
Yep.
And I remember he's made some of the best horror shorts ever.
Wow.
Ever. Horror comedy stuff. There's one called Bad Guy Number 2. Highly recommend you look it up. It's on Vimeo. It's the same characters, same people. You're going to love it. You're going to go absolutely nuts for this short.
Yeah, for sure.
There's another called Death Metal and I Summon the Demon. And they're just so, I mean, he's the best horror comedy short filmmaker in the world. Like, he just is.
Wow. I'm
And,
so excited to take that.
Yeah, definitely do. Everybody should watch them. Chris McEnroy is amazing. And when he was pitching it, and I'm like, okay, I where's like the vintage Chris McEnroy that I love from these shorts? And then there was the line where he's like, I don't know, his blood's getting in my blood, and like whatever. And like right then I was talking with Chris Phipps, another producer, and we were like, this is a Chris fucking McElroy movie. Like right now, like we felt it.
Totally.
Because the script reads like so crazy. It was just like, and other people were like, I don't even know what's happening. Like, what? Where did this guy come from? And I'm like, you just got to trust Chris McElroy. Like, he's got this, you know? And I mean, they dug a hole, put Kirk in the ground, the lead actor, in the actual ground, you know, to do this. I mean, it was absurd, like what was pulled off to make that happen. Yeah.
And it was so like there were these random details. All of a sudden, silver handcuffs or something was like arresting transformations. I'm like, what is happening? It was
it's a little bit. I mean, I think he's talked about it a little bit, but I mean, the idea was kind of a man that may or may not be turning into a werewolf.
Right.
And if you caught somebody midstream of that, whatever you want to call it, then what would that look like and be like? You know,
right? So, it was almost like a visual pun because it was like it was like arresting the transformation, but you were using cuffs to do it. I'm like,
yeah. Well, and then like, why does he have those handcuffs? And then like, who is he? And then like, and just goes so fucking
right. And then when the other person melts, and then they're like, okay, this is my size. Oh, amazing! That's
just so vintage McElroy humor.
But and that is what you're saying, the horror with the heart thing. That's why I was so into sort of the arc of what happened with Mike Myers. First of all, I love that on this podcast episode you said the sentence, "Mike Myers has heart." That's an all timer. But but the watching him slowly turn into the thing where he has to put on the mask to shield the blood, and then pick up the knife, and he's like becoming this villain-looking icon, whatever. But it sparked this weird thing in me while I was watching it. I was trying to puzzle through, like, who would be the most annoying horror villain to be killed by, right? I feel like I would be annoyed if I was killed by like Chucky, right? You're taken out by a doll and it's like whatever. So
yeah, that's annoying. Yeah,
right. Like, it would be just annoying to lose. But then watching Mike accidentally Mr. Bean everybody to death, I'm like, this is even worse. If you're getting killed by someone just accidentally killing everybody, right? Like, this is messed up. But then I was like, wait a minute. When Jason Voorhees kills you, like, what are you doing for him? You're just scratching an itch. Like, he needs to kill for revenge, and you're just whatever. But when Mike Myers kills you, you're helping along to do his job on his arc. It's like a donation of your life to this guy's journey. So I'm like, maybe it's great to be killed by him.
You're part of something, fine.
Yeah, maybe it's not annoying. Maybe it's like,
I'm part of something bigger. I have a purpose.
Like, and what other horror icons are you? Is that
part of your journey, man?
We're all on that. We're all on some path to be killed by our horror icons.
Yes,
that is. COVID, it's Trump, it's whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, well, we're getting plenty of help from that direction heading towards the bad end.
I will say, one of my favorite parts of that in Emily's segment is when John Michael, when he like slices her. By the way, that was my old house where we filmed that. When the stab goes in her chest and they pull it out, and we did the reverse and we're showing him put the mask on and spray his mask. Chris Phipps, who's kind of like in charge of a lot of the makeup stuff for the films, one of the producers. He was like holding the spray, and Eric Zapata, who's like the main makeup dude on the thing, he was like pumping it up, and I was like, just pump it, as far as we can go. And then I guess they went too far, and like the spray had too much kickback, and it just goes, and it sprays all my ceiling, everything, like. And it's like 30-foot ceilings. I mean, this is like a huge open area.
Oh, no.
And I was like, holy shit. But I didn't care. I was like, did we get the shot? Did we get the shot? That's what mattered. Luckily, I was the producer and like finding it. So we'll figure it out. But I love John Michael's turn when he she slips and like falls and he's like, are you okay?
I wrote a note down that it was my favorite line delivery in 2020 horror. It was just his in the comedy realm, right? Like, because he was literally like, "Oh no, you okay?" Like, it was just the perfect delivery of that line. It was amazing.
It's so good.
We had also done I can't remember, a podcast episode or a segment on best character introductions in horror. Like how you meet heroes and villains, right?
Oh, that's great.
And meeting Han was like that. The way he comes up, I don't know what to say, but the way he first of all, he's a jump scare, right? And second of all, he's like, I'm here to apply for the job out of nowhere or whatever. And then that byplay between him and Chad, that introduction of a character is just A+.
I low-key related because I was sort of like that trying to get a job at a GameStop when I was in high school. I would just show up and be like, I know a lot about video games, man. Let me get it. They're like, no.
Well, one of the rules we had of the wraparound, I was like, well, the entire wraparound has to just be full of jump scares. It's like really stupid, silly jump scares. Because again, everything is like acknowledging what's going on in horror and having fun with it. Right. So like, let's just do stupid jump scares like everywhere. You know, I mean, I remember we were like filming and I was like, oh shit, we haven't thrown a cat at anybody. Yeah. Like, what are we going to do? We have to throw a cat. I remember Cameron and the other team's like, Aaron, no, we have everything in this movie. We don't have to throw a goddamn cat. I'm like, no, I'm now set on it. We have to throw a cat. I want to throw a cat at Joe Bob Briggs. We got to do it. We got to figure out a way to do this. And so we're like looking and, you know, and like stupidly, we're like, well, you know, cats land on their legs. You can just throw an actual cat, you know, that could do it. And then like somebody, like a wiser person was like, Aaron, we're not throwing an actual cat. And I'm like, okay, fine. Crush my dreams. That's fine. I get it. Right. But then we found a cat, this like really creepy lifelike puppet cat that's used for like home, these like shelters and stuff for people that are like therapy cats, but they can't have cats because they're allergic to them. And they're like perfect. They make these little noises and all this stuff. They're like $100, but they look perfect. Oh, wow. And so I found that cat. And then I was like, okay, well, this looks great. So we can throw this and it'll go through and nobody will notice. But then we had to get somebody with a real cat that looked like that cat to like walk across.
Right.
And so we found actually the person's cat who does that is the woman, surname's Sydney Huddleston, the girl who gets stabbed in the first segment. That's her cat that leaves. Cool. That's later. And but we could not get the damn cat to like cross through. And then we're filming in this like abandoned old hospital that's like about to be torn down, and we're in like the basement area and the cat's just like running around, and then and we're like, oh my god, like where's the cat going and how do we get the cat? And like we could just I'm like, look, I just need to see it go like that. That's it. One time, please. Like I have learned, especially after the Pale Door, like I have learned that I cannot direct animals. Like that's where my fault is. They don't respond to me. It's not going to happen. And then I remember Cameron just looking at me like, I told you about this goddamn cat. Like, you know, I told you. And then, but then he was
the one who knew. He was a trouble himself. He knew about the cats.
Following your dreams complicates your life. That's amazing. Yeah. You got it done though, because I love the cat throwing scene, and I love just the half-assed excuse the character gives for why he has the cat and why he threw it.
I don't know. I saw it and I was scared. Whatever. I thought I needed help. Like,
so this is going to come really weird, and I don't even know what to make of this. But when we watch this thing, usually when you're watching a horror movie, you have horror movie references that come in your mind or whatever. My first reference on this was Bugs Bunny Daffy Duck, the one where he edits him out and he's torturing him like with a pencil, you know, because I felt like things were appearing in this movie and making things difficult for people, and they were sort of oblivious to it. One of the things that was amazing about Chad is he never reacted to anything. I mean, he reacted, but the reactions never lasted. Joe Bob was openly insulting him the whole movie. And he was in love and is devoted to Joe Bob at the beginning as he was at the end, right? And
he doesn't even hear it. He doesn't
even hear it. And like Han, how do you say his name?
Han.
Han. His character was openly defying him, like him doing, you know, and he was arranging this amazing party for him. Like he just didn't react to people bringing him down. He just wouldn't react to it, which is why I love that he dies with a see-through head and a thumbs up. He like died like his own logo.
Yeah. Well, and what Chase says, or Pete in the movie, Chase Williams' character, when he's in there, he's like, I think that's how he wanted to go. And I always like that line because that is how I think he would have wanted to go. I mean, when I talk with Jeremy King, you know, plays Rad Chad, like I was like, look, like you are just like, you're actually kind of a sad and lonely person, and you are just so looking for human attention. You just want somebody, but the one person you don't want it from is Sam, who's in your store. Like he's the one you hate. Like, and all your ire goes out to him, but then everyone else is just like, I just want friends. And we do subtly play in the like he's looking for his dad, you know, and he's like his long lost father and all that, which like ties back. All my movies have like dad issues because I'm estranged from my dad, so it's like a thing that I write into everything. Sure. But it starts right off, and it's like the first line. One of the first lines he has is like, "I never met my father," and it just sounds like this like weird joke. But it actually ties into like, you know, everything that's going on. So when he sees Joe Bob, there was more backstory there of like, you know, because actually
surrogate father.
Well, so there's a whole story of his mother being very promiscuous and not knowing who his dad is. And let's just say if we're lucky to do a sequel or something, we'll play into those ideas.
Cool.
And then the names and the dates that are in the blacklight room, we didn't get to like expand on this. Those are places where his mom like hooked up with people like throughout the last.
So he's beautiful minding like all his mom's hookups.
Yes, to figure out where his dad is. And then if you pause on a map, like one of my favorite things is and Han does such a good job of like, I feel so bad. I'm laughing at my own jokes. I apologize. But
no, it's great.
But like, there's like. So, you know, on maps like Greenland, there's like this whole thing of how Greenland doesn't appear on like tons of maps. Mm-hmm. So like we immediately put like Greenland and like cross it out on the map, like right off the bat. And then Han's just like, there's a part where I was like, I love the way Han says no daddy. And he like points to this one part of him. He's like, no daddy. And Han just cracks me up. Like, I just think he's so fucking funny.
He was.
On that map. But yeah, if you pause, there's all these little things like all over the place.
I gotta go look at that. And I actually, the father thing, because I was looking for backstories while I was watching it, and it was interesting that his I don't know my father came after the Phoenix Ashes line, where he has that genius, like, I just don't know what that means, man. Like,
yeah.
And he says to Mike, and then he drops that line. But the fact that you were having kind of like visual cues, that's amazing in that scene. I gotta go pause and look at that.
Yeah,
I know Nick wants to ask you about video stores.
I gotta ask you this.
Yeah.
So watching them in the video store was like a shot of nostalgia, dude. Like it just like instantly flashed back to like high school, middle school weekends, going with my friend, just renting some horror movie we know nothing about. So I want to know, do you have like a memorable rental that like changed, like built your foundation, that you went home and watched and it changed you forever?
Oh my God. There's a number of these. So, I mean, number one, I worked in video stores. So that was the thing, you know, so it's same for me completely. And that's a real video store in Austin, Texas called Vulcan Video. Oh, wow. That we were able to kind of repurpose and kind of make work. It's unfortunately due to COVID, it's now shut down.
That's
so it's just like one of the last like bastions of that. But God, I mean, there's two that come in mind. One's kind of a unique one because I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of horror movies as a kid. So I grew up in this like strict Christian home, and it was like just a thing. And I remember going like on Sundays, whenever there wasn't school on a Monday, was always like the coolest shit. And I remember I would always stay at my friend Matt White's house after like church that Sunday night. And we would go after church, we would go to the grocery store. We would get like Tombstone pizza, and then we would go to the grocery store VHS section because they would rent movies at the grocery store. And we were there, and I remember we got like a couple movies, and you know, I mean, like the edgy film I was allowed to watch at the time was like Big Trouble in Little China or something like that, and I just wanted to watch it like over and over again. But we got like a couple movies, but my mom. So his mom wasn't there. We were just staying with his dad, and we knew that we could kind of get his dad to maybe let us like rent some shit we shouldn't have gotten. And so we're looking around. We're like, well, what could we really have? What could really happen? And he's like, well, my dad's seen Alien. He likes that movie. I'm like, fuck. So let's get Alien. So we got Alien, and we're like showing. We had like the movie on top was like, I don't know, Weekend at Bernie's. We're like, oh yeah, Weekend at Bernie's. And then the second one was like Alien. He's like, whoa, no. And we're like, come on, like we're older now. Like you could watch it with us. And he's like, no, your mom. He's like, Aaron, if your mom finds out, I'm like, she'll never find out. You know, and let's find. I mean, she'll find out now, I guess. But she'll never find out. And I mean, granted, I don't know that she's in your Facebook group, but maybe she is. I don't know. Right. But anyway, so we watched Alien, and that was like the first time that because I'd watched some stuff on Monster Vision on TNT because I got that channel. It was like one of the things I could do. Mm-hmm. But they were edited, you know, it just wasn't the kind of the same. Watching fucking Alien, man, just absolutely like destroyed me because I was so scared. Yep. And I did not know that you could watch a movie and feel that way. I just didn't even know it was possible. So that was one, but that's not quite the same thing as far as like the VHS story experience. It's just like something that I very vividly remember. And it was like such a profound moment for like making me want to be interested in horror films. Sure. God, I mean, I would say, you know, like going through and just picking up the titles, like one that really comes to mind is probably Prom Night. Because the thing about Prom Night, or no, actually April Fool's Day. Okay. Would probably be one just because, or which was the one that had her hair was a noose and then she had a knife behind her back?
I think that was April Fool's. I remember seeing that one.
That's what it was. And I was just like, what is this? Like, what a crazy. And then the tagline was, so-and-so's having a party. Or no, wait, I'm conflating things because Night of the Demons was the tagline of Angela's having a party. Freddie and Jason are too scared to come. And I got that one later. But I remember the April Fool's Night thing was just like, what is this? It's a woman. Her hair is like tied into a noose. And she's holding this knife. And I just thought that was so cool. And I was able to go to a friend's house and we were able to rent that and watch that. And we were just like transfixed. It was so rad. And then we would go from that point on, we would go every week to like the little family video or whatever the hell it was. And, or go into like the little horror section. And then when I was in film school, there's a place in Orlando called Stardust Video. And they had this like grindhousey horror, like really crazy horror, like trauma shit and stuff section. And we would go in there and literally we would just spin around and just point. And then whatever we got, we would take home and watch. And I mean, just, like Frankenhooker and like, just random shit like that. Just like, what is this? So yeah, there was a lot of those, but I mean, that was a big part. Once we got into that grind of it, every week there was a different movie we were taking on.
The video roulette is a really tricky, fun game. I remember I was always scared to do what you did, and my guitar teacher was like, "You got to do it because if you pick a low budget one, they get more creative." And I remember the first one I got was, I think it was zombies versus vampires. And the only thing, we were in middle school, and the highlight of that film was like there was a part where like two women kissed. We were like, "There's no horror, but I guess."
But the roulette's still working.
But the roulette's still kind of.
Where are the zombies?
Still
yeah, there were zombies. I don't know who won. I don't know who won.
Well, it's a lot more fun to do the roulette physically present in a store than like spin through Amazon Prime and just like select that fun.
Oh, I haven't done that. That's I wish I had the time. I'd probably do that again just for fun. But
totally.
But yeah, but it was a small room. Like it was a small room. And they also, but then like later on, they started adding like NC-17 stuff in there. Not actual like porn, but they had like more of the, I don't know. They had like Embrace of the Vampire. I remember like Alyssa Milano's movie. I remember that showed up, and I was just like, "That's cool. Okay, let's get that." And that kind of stuff. So there was a variety of things, but it was such a small room. And eventually, we're like, "Hey, get more stuff in here, guy." Like, I'm not thinking I've seen it,
pronto.
And they did for us because we were there every single weekend. So
that's so cool.
That is fantastic. The whole video store like vibe fascinates me for movies because I was telling Nick the other day, I was like, "This is." I wonder if video stores are going to be like the Frankenstein lab of horror movies 50, 75 years from now, where they look back and it's going to look like, wait, you physically went and picked up moving images and physically brought them to where you lived. Like it won't look like anything that makes sense there, to them,
People, it's happening right now. I mean, like there are people who are on, like I've seen Letterboxd reviews and stuff. They're like, what the fuck is this? Like, why is it? And I'm like, so it's just a different world. I'm just kind of like out of touch with that. I'm glad I'm out of touch with that because I want to be remembering this and just I'm nostalgic for it. And clearly I am. I mean, I made this movie, So yeah, I totally get it. But to each their own. I mean, I'm still glad I'm glad that there's a few folks that there's a lot of folks that we've like introduced to this and like, wow, this is weird. Like this exists. I mean, there were reviews of people like, these things don't exist in the world. This is like, how is it modern times, but it's not modern times? Like, I don't get it. And I'm like, I don't care what time it is. It doesn't matter. Like the whole point is I like that about It Follows. Like It Follows, you have no concept of like what time in the world that movie takes place. There's like a clamshell phone thing. Yes. That's it. Yep. That's like it. And you don't really know what that is or the time period it fits within it.
And then they're watching some black and white movie. Like,
that's great.
Right.
It's great.
And she's reading like Dostoevsky. Like what teenagers are around reading like that? Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's unsettling when you can't place where you're at. That's why like April Fool's Day is intriguing. Like bring it because you can't categorize some of these things, and that would be one of them. Where what is this? Right? Is this comedy horror? Is it comedy horror? Is it actual? Like
I mean, it's horror. That's the one thing. Like, well, when we made this movie too, I gotta say the one thing that was so frustrating for me was it was at a time when everybody was talking about elevated genre and all this, and like and horror was like B horror stuff, and I was like, this is such bullshit. Like horror does not have to be elevated. Like horror is what it is. Like you can go back and watch. Especially like the Carpenter films and what Romero was doing and all this, and this idea that they didn't have like socio-political messages, like just shut the fuck up. Like this stuff is like permeating all of that. Also, I will say there was that weird controversy that happened where people were like, where Joe Bob said that, horror doesn't have, political messages in it. And it's like, and they misunderstood him completely with what he was saying. I mean, he's done dissertations on Texas Chainsaw Massacre and what's there. I think he just, personally didn't like the overtness of it is all that he was talking about.
Right.
But this stuff has existed forever. It's a beautiful aspect of what the genre and subgenres are. And this idea, and don't get me wrong, there became a derivative nature of these movies when, especially in the 80s, after the success of Halloween and Friday the 13th in particular, that kind of spawned this whole kind of like, less than copied versions. It's kind of like Michael Keaton in Multiplicity, like the fourth Michael Keaton,
It degrades,
was not quite up to speed. So it's kind of like that. And they made some of those. But you know what? That shit happens in every genre, like everything that happens everywhere. And just because those films were still popular does not mean that that's all that was being said in that time period. And it just frustrates me to see people kind of doing that. Because when Jordan Peele makes Get Out and Us, and they're like, well, they're not horror films. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're horror films. Like, Jaws is a horror film. It's a monster movie, Silence of the Lambs is a horror film. I understand there was a thing on Twitter about that recently, and I talked to Phil Noble and people about it. I'm like, it's a horror film.
Yeah.
And
Seven is a horror film.
It is. Like, just embrace it. It's okay. Like, anyway, sorry, diatribe over.
No, I love that diatribe because we deal with that as because with the community on social media and et cetera, you get a lot of that discussion, and it just always seems to go down the same worn track, and it just gets very frustrating because I've actually taught myself at this point to autocorrect elevated to excellent. Like, I just think elevated means excellence. Like, James Whale directed Frankenstein with excellence. He didn't think he was making elevated horror when he was making Frankenstein.
No, he was making a great movie. That's it. That's
he was just trying to do it as well as you can do it, or whatever it is.
I think that's what Wes Craven said. He's like, I wasn't trying to make a horror movie. I was just trying to make a good movie.
Right. Yeah. And then it has horror, like elements because that's where the kink in your character or your nature or whatever that's.
But I mean, the day that there's elevated drama, call me. You know what I mean? Like,
elevated comedy.
Just so silly. Well, and that's a theme like in like Ratchet's character, like he's like annoyed at that. We cut out some of the scenes that kind of deal with it, but he gets like annoyed. He gets like a little, it like bothers him when people talk about that kind of stuff because it's like so special to him,
right?
And all that. But yeah,
and that was another amazing kind of thing that came from Scare Package to me was. I hadn't encountered a movie in a while where characters were getting built up to be menacing and then diminished to be not, and it was rotating. Like, there were moments where Chad felt like he was being built up to be menacing, and then he absolutely was not. There were times where Han was menacing and absolutely was not. You're right, exactly. And it kept moving where you didn't. It was a moving target. Like, who's actually the villain and who's actually malevolent here? And it was a really cool juggling act.
Oh no, thank you. I mean, and Jeremy and Han do a great job of like that duality of how they're balancing that. And then even Sam, he's like peeking around the corner and all creepy and all that. And but I wanted to set up. So originally we had this idea of like there really was something sinister going on behind the store and like he was a part of it. And that's why he got captured. And I was like, I want to play with this in a different way. Like, let's make it a MacGuffin. And then honestly, a big part of this happened where I wrote this stupid fucking joke that I wish more people laughed at.
The McMuffin.
But it was the McGuffin thing. And like, I think it's my favorite thing I've ever written. It's my favorite thing I've ever written. I don't care. And even Cameron and other people are like, what? Like, I'm like, I'm telling you, like, I'm just doing it. I'm going for it. And once I loved that so much, I was like, well, let's just have fun. And then it made the red balloon. I've had to explain to people like, yeah, he's taking the red balloon to the room. And that's why it's in the room at the end, from the earlier part and stuff like that. And some people, even my composer, Alex Cuervo, was like, oh, I didn't even get that. I'm like, you've composed the whole movie now. Like, what the fuck?
Right. And there were all these little moments like where Mike was getting dropped off. I didn't even catch that on the first pass until I realized where he was actually being dropped. That's amazing. Talk about Alex Cuervo, because the music to this is incredible. And he works on Pale Door too, right?
He's a superstar. Yeah. Cuervo he's a friend I've known for a long time in the Austin area. And we met at Fantastic Fest, which is a big film festival, like, horror film festival, basically, genre fest. And he like showed up to me. He's like, hey man, I've seen some of your short films. I like you. I want to work with you. Here's a CD. And I'm like, oh, CD. And then he gave me a tape. And I'm like, what the fuck? That's cool. And I didn't listen to it for the longest time. And then I was in a rental car and there was a CD player in the rental car or whatever. And I was like, oh shit, I have the CD in my bag still from this weird dude, you know? And I put it in. I was like, holy shit, this is good. And from there, I've hired him ever since. And yeah, I mean, look, it was a really, really tough ask for him to do this because we wanted each director to kind of have their own thing, but feel like it's building in the same world. So what was nice about it was that because I did, you know, the wrap and the big finale, I was able to like slowly incorporate things. I wanted the directors to have what they wanted and kind of like, you know, that's there, but then keep them in the particular lanes that we needed. And then I was able to pull motifs from those pieces to culminate in the ending. So the music starts to kind of come together. And, you know, Cuervo just nailed it. I mean, he just absolutely nailed it. And holy shit, wait till you hear what he does in A Pale Door.
Yeah, I'm so excited because the music was such a standout element of this, and how it was all piecing together was kind of incredible to watch it all head in one direction to surface at the end.
Well, speaking of piecing together,
yes,
I gotta ask, like, because when I was thinking about like how all these pieces came together, I thought of it like a NASA rocket launch. Like, there's so many parts working together that has to come together for this one thing to work. Mm-hmm. What is it like managing like all of these projects for one big kick-ass film?
It's hard. It's a lot harder than people think. I mean, Cameron's original idea, kind of like when that one day when the cat was there and he's like, see, I told you we shouldn't do a cat. There was definitely a day when I was like, see, I told you we shouldn't do an anthology. Because it was such a pain in the ass to get. I mean, it took forever. This movie took 2.5 years, you know, of making it. And that's why we have 2 movies releasing within 2 months of each other, because we made The Pale Door and that's already coming out, and Scare Package just took so long.
Yep.
But it was, so what we really kind of, so the producing team was, we had to have a larger producing team. That was something we learned. And we had to have a spread out so that we could have somebody, you know, within each segment to kind of like, you know, curate, because I couldn't be on each one. But so we had myself, Cameron Burns, Alex Uding, Ashley Sneed, Sean Talley, and yeah, that's it. And Chris Phipps, sorry. Mm-hmm. And Chris was kind of like with the makeup effects and some of that stuff too. And then then each of us kind of had a specialty for each segment. And then it was really kind of like show running is the way we looked at it. So there'd be like episodes that are delivered to us. So, you know, we sat down, we talked with all the directors. Like I kind of like picked each one and then kind of worked with them. Like, let's talk about the tone. Let's talk about the style. Like it's gonna be practical effects. Here's the kind of humor we're going for. Throw in everything that you can. But then once we got into like a couple segments and we saw some similarities, we wanted to kind of divert and kind of, you know, zig and zag a little bit to kind of, you know, still keep it comedic, still dealing with tropes, but just like if you had 90 minutes of One Time in the Woods, Chris McEnroe segment, I feel like you'd just be like, oh, what the fuck? Like you have to like settle down, you know, like it'd just be so much. But if you do that and kind of like, you know, piece these together, there could be, and we spent a lot of time figuring out the order and like the way that they go in and out and all of that. But yeah, I mean, it was, you know, they would have an idea, they pitch an idea. We would go through the ideas. We rejected a ton of ideas from a ton of people. Mm-hmm. We had a number of directors that were in to direct, but then left. Like Emily, who did, like we said, Cold Open, she was one of the first directors I had on because she's Austin based. I've known her for a long time. And she had one that was in, but then she was going to go do a feature. So then she had to leave. Then I brought somebody else in to do a segment, but then she got busy and she had to leave. And then Emily came available and I brought Emily back in. and then like Baron Vaughn, who did the So Much to Do segment with the smoke thing and all that. He's the voice of, you know, Tom Servo and Mystery Science Theater. He's, you know, he's in like, I mean, every goddamn, she's in like 3 Netflix shows. I can't even keep track of what this guy does. I mean, he just released a new sci-fi show just recently. It's like a game show that he's the host of. And so he was so busy. So it was like trying to get his schedule in, you know, and then Noah as well, just kind of, you know, being an actor, we were waiting for some of the stuff he was doing. So it was just the juggling of that, of like, nope, okay, it's this segment. Nope, it's that segment. Nope, this person can't do it. This person can do it, you know. And then I was deliberately waiting. I didn't want to do the wrap and the finale, the horror hypothesis piece, until the end, because I wanted to be able to use things from that in that. So we were like sitting there kind of like waiting for this stuff. Not to mention, because we tried to make it so inexpensively, I was able to get people, they really talented people to do post sound and stuff and things. But we had to wait for them to be available. So like if they're like, hey man, sorry, I got a more expensive thing, we knew that we had to wait in line for that.
Yeah.
Like whenever something came in. So then even if we had everything together,
you're still in
then
a queue.
something like that could come in and we'd derail it again. So it was, we learned a lot though. I feel like we have a system now for how we will do this to be even better. And once we got going, we started booking. I mean, we really kind of figured out like how to do this and how to kind of like maximize, get the dollars on the screen. That's a phrase I always say, and find the right way to kind of put it out there. So yeah, I think we finally hit stride, but we definitely had the first couple segments were like a learning experience for sure.
It's so interesting that a team getting their muscle memory together is documented forever on the screen. Like you don't get that with a lot of like when the team that put together like the first Mac, like they became Apple and like whatever, but they, so you have a device, but you literally have a visual scroll of at this point we were doing this, at this point that's pretty amazing. I like the showrunner thing too because that is a hard trick to pull off. Like when you look retroactively, when I look at something like Twin Peaks, the original, the idea that directors were rolling in and they were like, okay, you're directing a show in David Lynch's universe, go. like, how are you doing that? How would you ever, do that? And the fact that they pulled it off and it did its own thing, but also felt part of the world. That's got to be such a tricky thing to pull off. Right?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, and that's why there were a number of segments where like, you know what, this just doesn't quite fit. Like, I don't think we can do this,
Right.
And or it was like these jokes would kind of exist in other segments. We had that happen too.
Sure.
So we had to kind of be careful. I mean, I remember Anthony Cousins, who did Night He Came Back Again Part 4, The Final Kill, which I love that title. And when he did that, and then in my segment, I was like, oh, we have some crossovers. We had, I let him do his thing, and I kind of pulled some stuff out because we had a killer that, in a similar kind of fashion, mass killer in a similar fashion. So I made sure that I pulled out some of my jokes and did some new ones. So we kind of didn't rehash all the same shit, but yeah, it's hard, man. It's really hard, and I think there's a lot of people who think like, oh, I'll just go make an anthology, and I understand because it's like I can make a short film, I can just do that 7 times or whatever it is,
Sure.
And I get that in theory, but if you want them to work together, I mean, we had the same, as we talked about, the same composer. We had technical specs that like we didn't have the same DP. Although if I'm lucky to do a sequel, we will have the same DP on all of them. Not for any faults of anybody, but just for like how to kind of keep things cohesive, even more cohesive.
Sure.
We had the same colorist. We had the same, sound designer. And then they had their individual editors that kind of delivered a cut. And then we, and for most of them, they were kind of the final cut. But a few we kind of like massaged a little bit to kind of fit into kind of what it is we were doing. Sure. And especially when we wanted to transition in and out of stuff, and kind of what's going on. Like, for example, One Time in the Woods originally started with just this shot of the woods and it was there. And then, but Sam's last thing, he's like, and he stepped in some nasty goo. So I was like, oh, well, we need to cut immediately to him stepping in the goo. Yeah. So we just, little things like that to like make that, fit even better. Right. And that was Alex Uding, who was like he's such like a kind of an unsung hero behind this entire movie, because when you're getting like all these deliverables from all these different films and you're bringing them together, and then he's editing the master thing, and then he's delivering everything. He's working with all these different directors. Like, because I mean, when you're dealing with a distributor too, because we sold the film, I sold the film to Shudder, and then we have Dark Sky Films, it sells it internationally for us. So it's like, hey, here's everything from every director that we need, everything from every producer of those segments that we need, everything from every actor from those segments that we need, like done over and over and over again. And normally you'd have like this one sheet that has everything, but you can't do it with an anthology. So it just made the logistics of that delivery mechanism. Like, look, you can make an anthology probably easier if you don't want to sell it, or you don't want to have it out in the world. Right. But if you actually want to like get your investors their money back, and you want to get it out to the world, you're going to have to go through these mechanisms, and it was not easy, but it was fun, man. It's the most
amazing
fun
anthologies. They're on my hard drive.
Have yeah.
I can't sell them to anyone. So I couldn't find a convincing reason as a child to think that High Plains Drifter wasn't a horror movie. I don't know that I've still figured out why High Plains Drifter isn't a horror movie. One of my favorites, but I love this horror Western genre. So Pale Door, I'm really excited for. Are there things that you can reveal from the making of it, or stories that happen behind the scenes that don't give anything away that we can talk about?
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to. This is by far the biggest film we've ever done. So it was created with Joe R. Lansdale, and his son Keith Lansdale.
He is amazing writer.
Yeah, I mean, it all started from I was asked to be on a screenwriting panel and about like how to sell screenplays. I had sold a few screenplays, so they wanted me there. And they're like, we might get another guest on. I'm like, okay, cool. Who I'll be, whatever. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's Joe Lansdale and his son Keith Lansdale. I'm like, what the fuck? Why am I on a panel with Joe Lansdale?
Right.
I need to be in the crowd.
Right.
And so many times I'm just like listening to him, like, go on. Like, I'm just listening. You're fucking amazing.
Yep.
But I was like, well, okay, well, I got to go. It's like in the middle of nowhere, Texas, like Beaumont, Texas or something. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going. Mm-hmm. And I went and I told him, we were telling stories, and Joe's telling these like amazing stories of like Ridley Scott this and these things and all these movies that didn't happen. And I'm like, I have like one story of a movie that didn't happen. and I, after making my first film, Camera Obscura, which was unbelievably difficult, like I had mentioned, and we, Universal, although the coolest part of that is, I got to make a movie. It's fucking cool as hell, but it has the Jerry Goldsmith Q and that Universal logo that goes around the globe. And I'm just like, oh my God. So that's a really cool thing. But I was talking, so Universal asked me to pitch a witch movie. And it was after Robert Eggers' The Witch had been successful and they wanted to do this or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'll come up with a witch movie. They're like, oh, do you have, actually, that's not true. They said, do you have a witch movie? I was like, yeah, I got a witch movie. And then I call Cam, I'm like, we got to get a witch movie. Like, let's go with a witch movie. So we had written this Western that was like a really violent Western. But it just was like the scope was too big. And then it also just kind of sucked. Like the whole second half of it was like, this isn't very good. I just didn't like where it went. But I liked the characters, and I liked this kind of core idea, which was at the time it was a stagecoach, and it was a group of cowboys rob a stagecoach, and then someone gets shot. They have to hold up in this ghost town overnight. And I was like, that's just a great setting. And I like that setting, and I liked some of the characters we had created. So we had to hurry and come up with something. I was like, well, that script sucks, but I like this. What if when they got to the town had a brothel and was inhabited by the coven of witches? And we're like, okay, we're on the way. This is cool. Mm-hmm. So I kind of do this, treatment pitch to them and everything, put this whole deck together. And they're like, so Aaron, yeah, I mean, it sounds nice, but like, why are there cowboys? I don't understand. I'm like, and I'm like, we just want normal witches. And I'm like, what the hell is a normal witch?
Normal witch?
The normal witches.
I don't know what witch.
The ones who work at Sephora.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay. So that didn't work out. But I told that story on the panel, and Joe like stops in this way, the only way that like Joe Lansdale can, and he's like, Aaron. I cannot do impersonation. That's just awful. But he's like, does it in his like East Texas accent, and it's just like, that's a good idea. You should do that, and then he's like, don't you all think that's a good idea? And then the whole crowd's like, we should all, yeah. And we were trying to make, at the time, we were developing a sci-fi kind of Cronenberg-y kind of film, and Cronenberg-y, that's how his name. I like Cronenberg-y. That kind of like
Cronenberg-y's better.
I like that better.
Oh fuck! I just thought of a joke I should have added on Scare Package. Because
we're here for the moment.
Well, in the scene, there's a moment where they look at the map, and it's got all of the different places that are like horror film stuff, and it's like where they're on the map. And like in the room, they're in the room, which is the last records room on the left, which really is the last records room on the left. And then there's like the Cenobite Cafe, and then outside is the Outpost 31. There's room 237, or like server room 237. But like there should have been next to the Cenobite Cafe. There should have been a Cronenberger joint.
Yeah.
Fucking A, man. God damn.
There's a sequel. There's got to be a sequel.
There it is.
Just for that alone, to make and what would be on a Cronenberger? Like, oh my God, how gooey and crazy.
Well, I don't know what starts on a Cronenberger, but it's not going to be the way it is when you're finished.
It's a lot of like melted Gouda that's like melting off the whole time. That sounds good. I'll take that. Anyway, sorry, not the point. So I was going to do this sci-fi film. And then, but then everybody was so excited. And then that night I went to dinner with Joe and his son Keith. And Keith is like also this amazing writer. I mean, he wrote like a couple Batman comics, an X-Men comic. He wrote with his father a new episode of Creep Show in the last season. Mm-hmm. And, he's just amazing. And we just kept talking, and they're like, this is a really cool idea. So we decided to make it together, and then Joe was really busy, so he couldn't kind of come on as a full writer, but he kind of gave us notes that was there. And then Keith came on as a full writer with Cameron and I, and then we were off and running. So it was like this crazy thing. And then what's even more absurd is that I had that meeting. It was like April 22nd or something of 2018 was when I was on that panel. 1 year to the day, I am in a car driving to Oklahoma to start directing The Pale Door.
Incredible.
So it was like a completely surreal experience. It happened so fast. And yeah, I mean, it's, look, I think it's, the trailer's out now and, encourage people to look at that, but it's I think it shows the film as a little more of an action film than it is. I think there's definitely some like crazy shit that happens. Like, don't get me wrong,
Sure.
That's there, but it has a lot of sentimentality to it. I think it's got some slower moments. It's got some things that are really, it's a story about these two brothers. There's a parallel to the witches, and there's like a background with the witches that, that maybe we're talking about these aspects of men underestimating the fortitude of women that are around them. Mm-hmm. But then also just the idea that, hate breeds more hate and violence leads to more violence. And like what creates this gang of outlaws and what creates this coven of witches. And there's like a parallel to that. And it was fun. I got, mildly pretentious at times with it. But then it's also like cowboys and witches, Sure. Right. So we do some there's some crazy shit that happens. There's some stuff that happens in a church that I can't give away, but let's just say we ended up having to build the church ourselves because in Oklahoma, they were not cool with us doing inside a church what I wrote happens inside that church. So it's a thing.
I wonder what the craziest scene ever shot in a real church with permission is.
That's a good question.
That's a list. That's
That's got to be a crazy list.
That's a list.
I would hope Silver Bullet would be somewhere.
That's up there. Yeah. Oh, you know what's a great one is that was it in the Kingsman like killing scene?
Oh, that one shot where you just
where they kill everybody, like in the church.
It's like Leonard Skinner's playing or something like that. And he's just going to town.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. I also really love Al Pacino in Devil's Advocate when he just walks in and he like touches the water. Like that's just like it's so creepy and like it's seared.
It's such a great moment. Yeah.
It's so good. He's so fucking good in that. Like I love that's at this moment where Al Pacino was kind of like, he never went quite Nick Cage, but he like had these Nick Cage-ish moments where he's like, I'm letting it out, and like he's just like, what? Oh, well, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to fucking Al Pacino impersonation.
Well, it's crazy to be able to be over the top and subtle simultaneously. It's just such a rare, like a rare thing that he's able to do.
Yeah, he's next level with that. Like he's so good at that. Just like I'm really from like say hello to my little friend was like that first like hint of it you really got.
Yep.
And then it just kind of blows up from there. But yeah, I think in Devil's Advocate when he's just getting mad, it's just like so good.
And those, movies like that or Angel Heart, they sneak up on you with the cast. You forget how incredible the cast of these movies were.
They scary,
right?
Oh my God. I wish I could go back to the 80s and just like cast like those. Because like the thing is, it's like now all those people are like, I can't get all those people, they cost so much money or different things. So, but it's interesting. Like one of my goals. So I didn't reference Angel Heart, but that's a great example. But there's a lot of those movies, like I was gonna say, like To Live and Die in L.A. is like a movie that it's just like John Turturro and fucking Willem Dafoe and just like just so Bill Peterson, and so there's so many amazing character actors that are in that weren't huge at that time at all.
Right.
But you know them, and now they're like each of them with like lead movies. What's going on, but. So when we were doing The Pale Door, originally we were, talking to like a lot of really big names and it was gonna be like a bigger budget and, and I mean, we got really close to some people that were like, wanted to do it and just couldn't work out the timing and some stuff. And then once I realized that, they're like, well, hey, can you make this for this amount instead? And I was like, I can. And it's like, okay, well now it doesn't matter. You can cast whoever you want. So then once that happened, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Now, and don't get me wrong, I was excited about some of those people. They're amazing actors too, but just there was something, and I talked with my casting director, Dave Guglielmo, and I was like, dude, let's do like the Avengers of indie horror genre actors, you know? And just like all these fucking people have small parts in the backgrounds of all this stuff that I fucking love and bring them all together. So Noah Segan, Pat Healy, Bill Sage. I mean, even Stan Shaw, who like I remembered in Monster Squad for forever, and I loved him in like Snake Eyes. And as a kid, one of my mom's favorite movies was Fried Green Tomatoes. And I had to fucking watch that movie all the time. But I remember like my family just being like that guy there, that Stan Shaw is a good actor. And I remember that as a kid, you know? And so like to get to hire him later. And
That's amazing.
yeah, just like all that kind of stuff that was there. And, you know, I mean, Bill Sage, like We Are What We Are. I mean, he's in American Psycho. He's in Hap and Leonard. He's in like all this stuff. Like just, and I've seen all these people in all these amazing roles. And I was like, let's just like, you know, bring them all together in this kind of like way. And that was, I mean, Melora Walters, like, fuck. Like, Melora Walters is the reason why I make movies. I know that sounds hyperbolic. It's not. And I can tell you exactly why. 1999. Okay, so my favorite filmmaker is Paul Thomas Anderson. Now, John Carpenter's like right in there. Spielberg and some stuff too. But Paul Thomas Anderson is just, not horror, of course, but like just someone that I just love. I just love.
I mean, there
aesthetic.
was pretty horror.
Right. It's amazing. It's my favorite ending possibly of a movie ever.
Oh yeah, ever.
I'm finished.
Yep.
Is just perfect.
And it's got so many different meanings to two words. Like holy.
Oh my God. His three look, Magnolia, Boogie Nights, and There Will Be Blood are perfect fucking movies.
Yep.
I mean, perfect movies in my opinion. Like they're there. So 1999, I go to see Magnolia. I had seen, that's, by the way, best year in film, by the way. 1999.
We both read the book.
We read the book.
Yeah, it's the best movie year ever.
best year ever. Yeah.
I've been saying that a lot longer before that book came out. But,
you played your flag first.
But it really is. I mean, it really, really is. And I mean, I had just seen like Fight Club like right before that or something too, and like The Matrix and shit. And I'm just like, what a summer this is.
Right. Election was, Jesus.
Oh my God, it goes on and on and on.
Right.
Even like smaller films like Cider House Rules is so damn good.
Yep.
Anyway, but so I and then finally we went to see Magnolia. I knew nothing about it. My girlfriend at the time was like, Tom Cruise is in it, you know? So I was like, okay, cool. So we saw it. I go through that movie. I sit through. It's 3 hours and 7 minutes. My friends are like fidgeting in their chairs. Like, and I get it for a lot of people. I get it. It's not for everyone. They're fidgeting in their chairs. And then the last moment, if people want to see, I'm not giving anything away. There's a slow push in, and Melora Walters plays this very troubled character named Claudia Wilson Gator, who's like just trying to find love. She's just trying to figure her life out. And she's kind of like, she's got a coke addict. She's got some problems. She's got all this shit going on. She's just gives this amazing performance. And at the very end, she's got tears in her eyes. And there's a person who's coming to talk to her that wants to like show her that's like, I'm going to fight for your love. And you don't hear what he's saying. And it's this long push in, you know, that Robert Ellsworth, the DP, is just like perfectly crafting. And then she turns and she looks right in the camera and she smiles. I got chills talking about it because it still gives me chills. And I cried. I just start crying. And everybody's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know what's happening. Like, and you know, fucking frogs fall from the sky. And this movie is a crazy movie. And I'm like, I don't know what happened. This movie changed me. We walk, I stayed through all the credits. We walk outside. My friends are like, okay, hey, we're going to go out there. I'm like, guys, I can't do anything right now. Like, I'm like catatonic. And I had left, I graduated from high school and I was about to go to be a doctor. And it was what I was told I was supposed to do. I was going to go to medical school and all this. And I was like, guys, I have to watch this movie again because I don't know what happened. Yeah. I don't understand it. And I have to understand it. I have to understand. They're like, that movie was fucking 3 hours long. What is wrong with you?
Right.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, you guys can go. And they're like, fine, we're leaving. And like, we don't understand what's wrong with you. I waited 20 minutes, came back in. There were like 4 people in the theater. I watched it again. So over like a 7-hour span, I watched that movie twice. And then that night I came back, I was talking, and I had a friend who was like saying, hey, we should go to film school. We should go to film school. And I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, I got here and I called my friend Sean Talley, who's one of the producers on Scare Package. Nice. And this other guy, Josh, that I fucking hate, he's a loser. And I called him and I said, I was like, guys, I'm doing it. I'm going to film school.
Wow.
So that happened. So then cut to, I'm writing The Pale Door. Who's going to be the madame of these witches? And I don't like using the same name of like the character name and the actor name. Mm-hmm. So I changed Melora to Maria. And I wanted Maria. I just thought she could do. I still think she was the biggest Oscar snub ever, in my opinion. Well, Toni Collette is up there in Hereditary. We'll say that.
Yeah.
And Lupito for fucking Us as well.
Right.
Like, oh my God, when she kills herself, like what the fuck? And like, which one is which? Oh my God, so good. It's amazing. But anyway, sorry. Melora Walters Magnolia, I thought was like one of the biggest snubs. So I wrote her a letter. We had some big actors that wanted to do it, and like they were giving me all these names. I'm like, nope, it's Melora Walters. Like, nope, it's Melora Walters.
So
like,
cool.
what do I have to do? I wrote her a letter and all this stuff, and her agent originally said no. And I was like, just give her this letter. Let's find a way. And then she did it, and she acted in it, and now I can text her right now, and she's my muse, and we like formed this like bond, and it's just one of those things that you can't script. It's just like one of those moments where you're like, holy shit. It's like when Scare Package was on the last drive-in, and I grew up watching Joe Bob, and I see Joe Bob say like my name, and I know him. I know John. I know, like, I directed him. Like, I fucking understand this. But when he's like, Aaron, Aaron Koontz, a Texas boy, or whatever, and all this stuff. I'm like, what is going on? And then it's like Joe Bob. He's like 4 stars. Joe Bob says, check it out. And again, I guess I cry a lot, but I got teary-eyed.
Are you kidding? That's a once in a lifetime. Those things don't happen every
So
day.
those two parallels, like to have Joe Bob come back and do that, and then to have Melora, come in and be Maria, in this movie, and she's so fucking good in this movie.
I can't wait to see this.
It's just such a cool
Wait,
thing.
roll this back for a second. So the second watch of Magnolia, did you figure it out? Did you figure out what happened to you? Or were you still...
Does one ever figure out Magnolia?
Not what happened to the movie, but what happened to you? Like what it did to you? Because I had a very similar reaction to Cat People, Val Lewton's Cat People, as a kid.
Wow.
Like, right, so like, but I never figured out what it was. Like I just knew I loved it, and I grew more sophisticated about how they do what they do. But sometimes something just resonates with you, and that's it. Like there's no.
No, it definitely, it was just one of those films where I knew there was more going on than what I had just witnessed. Right. I knew that there were things I'm like, why is this happening? And like, they're all singing, like there's that scene where they're all singing Amy Mann's Wise Up together, and like it cuts to all of them singing. And it's just like, how are these things all tying together? And there's this really beautiful open that was done by the late, great Ricky Jay that's narrating all of these happenstance situations, of like, these crazy stories of like, and they're based on real stories of things that have happened. And that's why there's this whole central theme of like, but it did happen. And that this movie is another one of those Ricky Jay stories. And then once I start to kind of like, I start to realize that, then you just start going through. And then after that, I saw it in the theater again, but then it wasn't in the theater very long, and it was gone. Right. And I was like waiting to buy it, and I bought it. And then, I even taught a class that had like 4 people in it because nobody wanted to go on Magnolia and the way of like constructing these different characters, but having them kind of come together in unique ways. Right. And I just thought it was so beautiful. But yeah, there's like these things like, there's 82 references to the number 82 or like 8 and 2. It's like 82% chance of rain. He's like playing blackjack. It's like, I need an 8 and 8. And he gets a 2. The room is 082 and all this. And then there's stuff about like biblical messages, and like every time there's a door that says exit instead it says Exodus, and then you look up Exodus 8:2, and it talks about for your sins I'll plague thee with frogs and shit. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on with this movie? Like, and Paul Thomas Anderson still to this day is like, oh, I don't even know what you're talking about. That's amazing. Like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah, right.
Fuck you. It's super pretentious, but like I just love Easter eggs. That's actually why there's a lot of Easter eggs in, Scare Package. There's so many Easter eggs in Scare Package. Sure. Like just everywhere. Right. And that's, even the Impaler's sweater that he has, that's from when he killed the frat bros. Because at the time was when that Brock dude got off for
Brock Turner.
So like he had gotten off for, those horrible atrocities that he did. And I was just like, well, fuck this. I want to kill frat bros, like that's what I want to do. So I made a whole thing about that. And but the letters that he has are Delta, Epsilon, Alpha, Theta, death, and shit like that. So there's so many, and even the mask that he has, so it started with, if you pause, there's like a moment where he turns his head, you can see like the different faces. Right. One of the faces, it started with a Donald Trump mask, and it's like Trump's face that's there awesome. As well. So we just had so much fucking fun with all this shit.
I love that you layered the masks. That's good.
We went. Well, to me too, it's also kind of an homage to like the Mike Myers thing, and like how that kind of comes from a what's his name mask.
William Shatner.
Yeah, William Shatner. So, I mean, it's just, fun to like say, well, we started with a Donald Trump mask.
That was the original layer.
Yeah.
Then the evil spread from there. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and also it's I guess the other thing that jumps out to me is if that movie if Magnolia doesn't end on that smile, does the movie still find you that way? Like, or does it need that moment to hit you? And if it didn't hit you, would another movie have found you like later, or did it have to be that one?
Well, there were other, I will say Fight Club really got to me too.
Okay.
That same year, like Fight Club was another one of those movies I was like, what the fuck? Like this is so, I love how many people like misunderstood Fight Club over the years too. I love and hate it at the same time.
Sure.
Like it's, because it's actually, it's an examination of toxic masculinity. Like it's written by a gay guy.
Right.
It's written by a man who's talking about these problems that are there, yet this like macho bravado sense of folks like kind of reappropriated it as let's get together and punch each other. And it's like, that's kind of making fun of you. And it's making fun of the consumerism that you're actually a part of at the same time. Right. And it was just one of those things where I was like, that year was like such a pivotal year in film. And I saw so many amazing movies that it was just like, I have to do this, I can't imagine that movie without her look. I don't even want to imagine it because the movie is so dark and it deals with so many heavy subjects and it's so sad and somber that you have to have a sense of hope. You have to have like a sense of hope. And if not, it just, I don't know. I'm
totally with you. I felt the same way about There Will Be Blood, where There Will Be Blood felt tactile to me. You could feel the oil drills making your floor shake if you're watching it on the right screen and all that stuff. And if you don't have that kind of impact of the physicality of the movie making you feel alive, then it's basically a death cult movie, right? Like you need that kind of the waves of like waking your body up with the explosions and the brightness in between, or it's just too much. Like it doesn't.
Well, and it's like, I think that's a great example. I think it is kind of like a death cult movie by way of like Citizen Kane,
right?
Like just this examination of somebody kind of like losing themselves into the madness of like the power that they have and like what that means.
Yeah.
And I just think there's a wonderful, I think that Citizen Kane and There Will Be Blood make a great double feature pairing of films to watch. And I think they're on equal scale, honestly.
Yeah. I agree
that highly. And that scene where like the thing explodes and then his son, loses his hearing and it goes to that, like, that's just so heartbreaking. And, and PTA is just so damn good at like what he does with familial drama, and like dealing with like the heart of that and, and just like not trusting anyone. And, the beginning of There Will Be Blood is literally 20 minutes of no dialogue.
Yep.
And it's riveting.
Just virtuosic.
It's riveting.
Totally.
I made a short film called Otter Student, which was like the first kind of movie that I made that had like some decent success and kind of, got people asking what I wanted to do next. And I decided I wanted to make the whole film. It's only 12 minutes, but I was like, I want to make a film that has no dialogue, but you don't realize it until the movie's over.
Yeah.
And it's great. And I talked to people like, did you realize there's no dialogue? Like, oh shit, nobody does say anything.
Right.
And I was like, cool. Perfect. And that's me.
That's such a cool trick. I had that experience with Rafifi, the French heist film. There's this incredible heist in there where you don't know you're watching a movie for 22 minutes and no one's talking. Like it's just an incredible, like
that's so cool.
Pull that off. That's and the hostility of Plainview's character, I have a competition in me. He is so good at that. Like that was the thing, and that's one of the frustrating things. That's why we made Hello Weekly our enterprise, trying to be purposefully broad enough to pick up anything with dark elements and not just try to be in a straitjacket horror, right? Because that character, when he doesn't understand why he hates every human being on the earth, right? Like, and why he has to compete everybody down. It's on top of him, not him on top of it. And that's scarier than almost all horror monsters that you can think of, at least on paper, right? Like
no, I agree. I think he's the other side to like a Hannibal Lecter coin, where there's something to him there. But but keep in mind too, there's like, it's alluded to the problems that he's had with his family and like what's there and like
Right.
how sinister this man is. And by the time you get to the end and you realize like when his son's grown up and he's talking to him in the office right before the ending, and he's just like so mean to him, and he's like, "You're a bastard. You're not even my actual kid. I just used you."
Yep.
You know, and
You
it's
were
all
proud.
just, oh my God, it's just so, and clearly that is coming out because of what's happened to him. You know,
Yep.
like, and again, not to talk about my own film, but like an honor student, a big part of that is like seeing somebody that's doing something horrible, that seems like a horrible person. And then by the end, you start to wonder, oh, what happened to them and like what caused them to be there.
Right.
And again, it's so much of a There'll Be Blood parallel to me in that way. I'm fucking not close as engaging. But the goal was just to be an homage to that in that way, because what he's doing there is like, you just realize you're like, oh my God, like what pain has Daniel Plainville gone through to like
Right.
make him be this decrepit of a person, you
Right.
know? And not to make this political, but like you talk about, like you see Trump, like you see Trump's parents, you're like, well, fuck, now I get it. I understand, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
You start to see and you start to understand like what this is. And, you know, the Pale Door, again, it talks so much about, you know, like the witches have a background that ties into Salem. So it goes back to there. And that was something that I wanted because, you know, even though those weren't real witches, they were religious zealots who were persecuting people because they didn't understand something.
Right.
And it's such a dark fucking time period of things that had happened. And I mean, I read a story, and look, nobody was actually burned at the stake in the United States, but people were burned at the stake overseas. They were more hanged and stoned, like that's that much better.
Right.
But I read one story. So we have a character in the film named Cotton Mather, who's based on the real Cotton Mather, who literally wrote the book on hunting witches.
That Maleficarum, or however you say it. Yeah.
Yes. And like, exactly. Magnus, yeah. And then he had the Trials of the Witches and that too as well. But anyway, he wrote all these books. And there was a rumor of a story that was either him or a descendant of him or something, that a woman who was accused of being a witch in Salem had fled because she was pregnant, and all she wanted to do was have her child. And she's like, and then somebody found her in this other town, and she's like, just let me have my baby, then you can kill me.
Oh,
Just
wow.
let me have my baby. And they burned her at the fucking stake,
Wow.
pregnant.
Wow.
And I was like, so imagine if a person in the crowd who was friends with her and helping her escape and like what was there, maybe there's a person who dabbled in like some black magic stuff, was like interested in this, and saw all the hate that came from these religious zealots at that time. Maybe through that sequence of events, like created the first real witches, like
Oh,
were
that's
created. So
so-
like, and
that's
so that
so
became
good.
the backstory.
Right. Because they're literally faking it till they make it, but accidentally, and now they've made it. And now there's witches, which is
Well, and that's what happens in our country. It happens when we perpetuate our own demise all the time, you know.
Right.
And what
Right.
this is, and history repeats itself. And it's like you try so hard not to make something happen that you end up inevitably making it happen.
Yeah.
My mom did not want me to watch horror films. Look what fucking happened.
right.
You know?
Right. Reverse manifestation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
She just not even a week ago, she's like, you know, I rewatched this movie with Sandra Bullock, and it's just so heartwarming. It's called The Blind Side. And I just feel like you should make movies like The Blind Side. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry to disappoint you. By the way, don't watch The Pale Door. Don't watch it. Rent it, buy it, and
Right.
just throw it away. So, you know.
Well, Israel will be like, here's practical magic. We'll get you into the
Yeah.
witches.
No, she doesn't like that either. No, my mom was one of the Harry Potter's evil people back in the day.
I saw Robert Eggers of the Witch in a very conservative area, and half the audience, which was not large, had walked out
Oh.
midway through the film. And by the time I left, I was in the lobby of the theater. I had heard people arguing on the way out about how bad it was. And there was this boyfriend girlfriend who were like, the girl was like, "What kind of person do you think I am that you would bring me to this?" I felt like they were breaking up, and I just loved it. I loved every second of the devastation
Oh my
that
God.
movie was wreaking on people. And that time period, like one of the very first scares I got from a work of fiction was a story called Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which is set in a really dark witch era, like that Scarlet Letter, but supernatural kind of vibe to it. There's something about that era that's really unsettling to us, to people when you get it right, which is.
Yeah. I mean, well, number one, I have a new goal for what I want to do, which is I'm going to break up couples with the Pale Door. So
there you go.
That should Scare Package brings them together.
Right.
Pale Door breaks them up.
I love this process.
Yeah,
right.
I love it.
And then you need a third movie that counsels them back together. And you got a whole loop.
I can figure that out. Teach their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, I wish we could have done the 1690s are so much more expensive to even do. So this is like a flashback sequence that like talks about the origin, because like our movie takes place in the 1890s. So it's all like Western era
Deadwood
stuff.
style. Yeah.
And then you learn a little bit of this history and a flashback of the witches. And so we get to do that in the same town that's like existed 200 years prior and what that meant and stuff.
That's really cool.
But it's really cool. Yeah. And what Eggers did there is so, I mean, I saw that at Fantastic Fest. It was like the first US screening and nobody kind of knew what it was. And for fucking months, I'm just like, Black Phillip.
Right?
And I'm like, one day you'll know what Black Phillip is. And I can't wait until you know. So yeah, that's a super rad movie.
So when does Pale Door come out, and how do people access it, and how do people support it before it comes out? What can the listeners do to support?
Yeah, I mean, so it's out August 21st on, it'll be like, some kind of premium VOD, whatever the fuck that means now. I guess it means it's a little more expensive. I'm not entirely certain, but it's not going to be like $30 or some shit. I don't know what it'll, I hope it's not.
Prices.
I mean, look, Mulan's a $300 million movie. It's a little different exponentially. So
I don't think it's different. I still think $30 is way too much. But go ahead.
I mean, look, families of four, whatever.
That's true.
To each their own, right?
Yes.
But so it'll be on premium VOD on that date. So it'll be for rent everywhere. And then we're actually in some theaters, which is weird. Look, I'm not asking anyone to go to theaters.
Right.
That's your own decision. But if you are going to go already, go see The Pale Door. And then I'm going to do a roadshow tour to a bunch of drive-ins. So I'll be leaving and going to like all these drive-ins across the U.S. By the way, if you have a drive-in that's near you that you want to have it play, let me know. Contact me, and I can try and make it happen.
Definitely, LA's got to have something.
I didn't know if you're in LA, then I think we are. I can't say which one, but we are talking about a couple drive-ins.
Okay, cool.
So yeah. If you're in LA, then yes, that's covered. I saw Ohio State, so I didn't know if there was like an Ohio tie. So that's but yeah, so I'm gonna road trip around, and then I'll bring some like posters and sign those, and then we're handing out bandanas as masks from the gang's bandanas.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, that works out as like a kitschy
amazing
thing, which is smart. So we're doing that, and and then just rent it and don't pirate it. Please, dear God, don't pirate it. Because it's like
we have been at war against that for years in our Facebook groups, so we got your back.
I mean, look, I could just say personally, like, there are people who have like donated money and things to this to see it get done that like will not make their money back if they do.
Right.
Period. And if you like The Pale Door and you want us to be able to make other movies, then we need to make that money back on this movie. We need to make all this stuff back.
Yep.
And so those dollars matter, So look, if you need to pirate Mulan, go the fuck, whatever you need to do. But these smaller movies like this, it just matters. It just matters so much, I mean, at minimum, just wait till 2021 to pirate it. That's it. At least do that, But I would say, like, if you happen to live in a place that there's no way you can see it or whatever, maybe just like you privately, I get that. I could understand some aspects. Like, I want everybody to see the movie.
Sure.
But there is and it's not greedy. It's not like we're getting rich off this shit. It's like, well, just for the people that don't get it, what I mean? That don't.
You shouldn't have to make it explicit. If you listened to this episode as we released it, and you listened to all the work and the coordination and the team and the investment of time and effort that everyone has to put in to make something like this, you got to support it with dollars.
I mean, we survived. This is a true list. We survived Category 5 tornadoes, flooding, hail, We had lightning strike our generator. We lost multiple days due to weather.
Oh my God. You didn't get frogs from the sky? Because that was the...
Well, the joke was that it's like, because the shit we did in the church, that this was like God being like, oh yeah, Aaron,
Oh, yeah.
fucking A, you know. But I mean, the flooding was so bad, and we had to rent all these props and costumes. We had a lot of era costumes that are so expensive. So, you know, we were literally like digging trenches to like reroute the water like underneath the small town that was there. And I mean, had the tornadoes not shifted, the whole movie would have just gone under. So, you know, so maybe there was a God that moment. I don't know.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so it was. I mean, and then in post, because when COVID hit and we couldn't use all of our vendors and what was happening to kind of like do everything, I ended up taking over. I mean, Greg McLennan was my main editor and was like fantastic, but then it was like through the holidays and then going into like, you know, later on when we were finishing the film in 2021 or 2020, excuse me, I was like, well, dude, I need to edit at this time because I can't ask you to keep doing this. Like, you know, you're stuck and it's hard, and, you know, he had other work to do. So I was like, I'll just take over. So I started editing like a maniac to the point where I wasn't sleeping at all. I actually one day just literally passed out. Woke up like with like blood all over me. I had hit my head and passed out due to like sheer exhaustion. I had to go to the hospital and get an IV and all this stuff. And it was like, yeah, you can pass out. Like you can reach this point. Your body can reach that level of exhaustion to where it just shuts down, just completely shuts down. And I'm glad it happened because it was like a wake up call for me to be like, I need to wake up and sleep, you know? But I mean, I was averaging probably an hour to, I mean, I would literally only sleep when I rendered out the movie because that would take like 2 hours to render. Sure. And I turned the sound of the computer on loud. So when it was done rendering, it would wake me up. And then I would just fall asleep on the couch for, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours. And that was it.
Crazy.
And I had to do it because we had to deliver still. We had a contract with our distributor and we had to meet deadlines.
Sure.
And I was like, well, I can't ask anybody else to do this. So I just did it myself. So, I mean, you know, literal blood, sweat, and tears.
There it is.
Yeah.
So definitely support this movie.
Definitely support. You got support. There's a hospital bill involved. We got to sell these movies. Right?
Plus you're also getting jobed by God, so we got a double support.
Yeah, you got to.
You need some backup here.
Protect me. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it is amazing. We are looking forward to this.
Yes.
And recommend anyone who hasn't seen Scare Package, you got to go check Scare Package out. Unbelievable. And all the things you were referencing here. I'm excited to watch the shorts you were talking about. Not only yours, but what's his name again?
Chris McEnroy's. Yeah. I would recommend. So Anthony Cousins did a short called The Bloody Ballad of Squirt Reynolds. That's so fucking funny. So look that up. If you look up his name, you'll find it. Squirt Reynolds, it's based on a killer who had like a Burt Reynolds. You'll see. So good.
Buster Scruggs by way of trauma. Okay.
Dude. So yeah, I went to Texas Frightmare and I saw his short there with Chris McEnroy. We were just there like hanging out because that's what we do. And we saw his short. And I was like, holy fuck. And we had somebody drop out at the last minute and we needed another segment. And I was like, well, I wanted another segment, like with a particular vibe. And I saw it and I was like, this guy's it. And Cameron was there with me. And I was like, let's take this guy to dinner. I'm offering him a fucking Scare Package segment.
Right.
You know, and nobody knew what Scare Package was at the time.
Sure.
You know what I mean? We're creating this idea. Mm-hmm. And he came in and then, you know, wrote the night he came back again, part 4, and fucking killed it. But it's so good. But yeah, so Bloody Battle Squirt Reynolds, he did that, which is amazing. Mine is not a horror thing. It's called Honor Student. It's more of a drama.
Right.
But then, and then Chris McEnroy just look up Chris McEnroy shorts. Like they're on his Vimeo page, but cool. Death Metal.
We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, they're so fucking good. History. And yeah, you know, there's a lot of fun there. And then Scare Package, the Blu-ray and DVD and all that comes out October 20th. It'll also be on VOD, like outside of Shudder at that time. And then we also, apologies for the plug, but we have a store of like all this crazy Scare Package merchandise. That's like insane shit. So if you want to buy the Blu-ray from us, We can like sign them and stuff. It's actually less than on Amazon. Just saying.
Perfect.
Bigos, you have to give them to Bigos, not Joe Bigos. Bezos. Joe Bigos is a good dude. Joe Bezos is different. But you don't have to give the money to Amazon. So if you don't want, you can do that.
Perfect.
And then, but we have like the lollipop from the Courtney and Hillary Andahar segment, like one of the actual lollipops that we like had. We've got bunches of those you can have. We've got
What Mike merchandise do you have for me?
So we have a trading card set. That's a vintage trading card set that's like 60 cards, and he's got 2 trading cards in it.
Oh,
They have quotes and all this, and like their favorite song and like favorite killer. And
that's hilarious.
it's like they're all like curated, and the set comes in a VHS kind of little box.
Oh, that's cool.
They're so fucking cool. We've got bumper stickers, pins, like just all kinds of shit.
Amazing. And does it help to find you or the movie or anything like that on social media? Follow.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I'm very active on Twitter and Instagram in particular, and
Cool.
so, just say hi. And I love hearing from people that like the movie. Don't like the movie, don't have to say hi.
Keep that to yourself.
The fuckers that retweet me, I get these guys that like retweet me. They're like I posted about the DVD or the Blu-ray, and somebody's like, I fucking hate this movie. I'm like, thanks for watching. Like, I don't know what to say.
We got your review on Shudder, dude. Suck it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, like you could just post about that separately. Like, I don't get.
Yeah, because you don't do that in life. Like when someone's driving in a terrible, annoying car that I hate, and they stop at the stop, I don't get out of my car and get in their car and just drive around in their car and be like, "Look at this dumb car!" Like, just leave it alone. Like, wow.
Yeah, it's just like, and it's an indie film, so it's like we're poor and the person lives in the car,
Right.
and it's like, and you're just egging their car, and it's like, I know, like, come on, like, just fucking give me a break. Good God,
I know.
man.
Right. Well, your car's got the Freddy convertible roof, so you'll be fine.
That was fun.
That was fun to do. Yeah, that was fun to do.
You can
That was another one of those like let you know what kind of movie we're in moments.
Yes,
and tell the horror fans that like you're in a safe space.
Right.
Like I get you.
Yeah, right. And Chad sort of gets you.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy doesn't know anything about horror films. That's what's so funny. As the actor, he's like constantly, like he would say things. I'm like, nope. And he's like, Aaron, no one's going to notice. I'm like, shut the fuck up. I notice.
Right.
This is for diehard horror fans. Like Ryan Turek, when he saw the film, was like, he called it from Blumhouse. He's like, this is inside baseball of horror. And I was like, that's exactly what it is. Like there are jokes that I think land for people outside of it, and that's fine.
Sure.
But the more diehard horror you are, the funnier it is. Like when Chase shows up as the Corey Feldman thing, like that is for the people who are like diehard Friday the 13th fans and Part 4 in particular fans and all that and get it, they're losing themselves. Yeah, and then other people are like, oh, he looks funny. And it's like, that's
well, and it's
fun.
also right. It's got to be so weird to not know that reference and see that. Like you must
very committed to the ball thing.
Totally. I love the fact that he had his character, if I remember right, had only ever seen one horror movie, and it was the exact one he needed for that plan, right? So
yeah, he's like, I don't know. The only one I remember is that one with Corey Feldman, Corey Haim. No, the Lost Boys did, and they're confused.
Exactly.
That's just me. That's just like stupid. Like so many. I just told so many stupid jokes this movie.
But the fact that like, so there's so many where you can do the Freddy Roof visual and just like be in and out of that joke in 5 seconds. But the Corey Feldman, you have to like go end to end.
Well, that's a big thing. Like when we were writing that, I was like, we had this whole story. I was like, how are we going to kill the killer? Like, how are they going to escape? Like, how are we going to make this happen? And I was like, well, what always happens? I was like, well, what always happens in horror films is like, Pamela, the what's her name? Jenny puts on Pamela's, sweater and, Friday Part 2 and stuff like that. I was like, okay, we could do something like that. And then I was like, well, but I love that, like, he sees like the wrong, like he does a flashback and I was like, wait a second. Oh my God, this could be fun. Like, well, what do we do? Like, well, what would distract him? And then we were like, well, we had this whole backstory of him like saving this cancer kid or whatever. And I was like, well, cancer kids this is so insensitive, but like, this is so stupid. I mean, I sympathize with anyone. It's a horrible disease. Don't get me wrong. Okay. But I was like, well, the one they have their head shaved, and you know who else has their head shaved? Corey Feldman at the end of Friday the 13th Part 4. And I'm like, this could be fucking funny. So we went for it. I couldn't direct it. I could not direct that scene. Like literally, my DP, I was laughing so hard when I saw Chase in it, because Chase is like so in his short shorts and shit, and I couldn't take it. And he's just like, "What's up, Aaron? How you doing?" I'm like, "I can't do it. I can't direct this. I'm completely unprofessional." So I turned to my DP, Andrew Barrett, and I'm like, "I'm looking away. Just tell me when it's over." And then I would watch playback. And then I would watch the playback, and then I'm like cracking up the whole time, because like literally they couldn't do a take without my laughter.
Right. Well, no, the way he played it, and even the backstory film was hilarious and shouldn't have been. Like, I was laughing at the cancer kid backstory. I couldn't believe it cut to that. I was like, what am I looking at?
That was one of those, like, are we going to do this? Are we actually going to do this? And then I was like, fuck. Like, and then it became, at that point, the movie had become so absurd that I was like, hell yeah, we're going to do it.
Right. Well, yeah, right. If
I mean, well, and that's the same thing with, I know you were trying to wrap up and get me off of here. This is what happens.
No, we're totally
that's the
good.
same. I'm kidding, kind of. But that's the same thing that, like, we had the ending. And then I had a friend who worked on Alita Battle Angel, Robert Rodriguez's movie.
Oh, wow.
And he worked on the special effects team. And he's like, hey, dude, I got all these pyrotechnics left from Alita, but I got to blow shit up. They go bad after a period of time.
No shit.
And I was like, oh, shit. Okay, I'll figure. It's going to happen in Scare Package. I'm blowing shit up in Scare Package.
Oh, shit, that's it?
I'm blowing shit up. And then we had done so we bought this like piece of shit Volkswagen that was Sam's Shaggin' Wagon. And we had bought that, but then we had gotten so much blood in the car when we did like some of the segments that like we ruined the car. And the person was like, well, you have to buy this car now. I'm like, God fucking damn it. And then we didn't have enough budget, but we're like, fine. And now I own this piece of shit wagon that's blood stained. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? It was parked. So the video store, Vulcan, is parked outside there because we knew that we were going to like do something with it, but we didn't know what yet. So we put this cover on the car, and I was like, hey, can you leave it outside the video store? Because like the car barely worked, and we had to like tow it and shit. And I'm like, I got it there. Can we just leave it there? And they're like, yeah, it's fine. Nobody, like, it's a video store. Nobody really comes by, you know? So we were allowed to keep it. But then I guess something happened, and the cover got blown off. So 2 different times, the police got called, and like they're like investigating the car because they thought a murder took place in this car. And they're like, nope, it was a film. Here's a picture. So like after the first time, we had to give them photos so they could show the officers of Zoe Graham, who plays the final girl, like smiling in blood in the middle of the car, being like, see, it's happy. It's
Wow. And have an alibi for the film.
Yeah, but then
so now 2 things are happening here with this story. The first thing is, I feel like police just need an exception for anything that looks like a murder scene directly outside a video store. Like, just don't even investigate those. Because, and then second, I feel like if I do murders now, I need to get someone to pose in the murder with a smile, and then I'll just do
like
a
it's
film.
totally fine.
Film exception.
They were happy to be there.
Yeah,
they were happy to be there.
kind of like the house that Jack built kind of shit. But
oh yeah,
yeah. There's or like American Psycho, I guess he kind of does that. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's a plus. But yeah, then I had this fucking car. I'm like, well, fuck this car. You know, I don't want it.
Right.
And I had these, you know, explosives. So then when I was like, well, let's like tie this back in and do like one more kind of like wake up, you know, from her in the car. Cause I'm like, whatever, you know, it's fun.
Right.
That's a trope in itself.
Yep.
And also like, how the fuck does he get in the back seat of the car? Like,
right.
But that happens. Like, you know, the person sitting up in the back seat of a car happens it's so weird. Of all the crazy things that happen in this movie, the amount of times where people are like, but I don't understand how he got in the back seat of the car. And I'm like, have you watched the rest of this movie? Like,
that's where you bump.
Like, that's where I lost you. Like, I mean, at least I got to the end and then lost you. But that's
right, exactly.
You know, and then we practically got to blow up the fucking car,
which is amazing. Yeah,
yeah. It's just and we only had one take, obviously. You know what it is. And John Michael, his character, like Mike, I'm like, dude, you are so happy. So you're gonna feel a ton of fucking heat. This is gonna be a hot as fuck thing. It's gonna startle you. Yep. It's going to kind of be there, but like you just got to be ear to ear grinning. And then at one point, like look over and be like, aren't you loving this? And like, she's not getting it. Right. But then Zoe, who Kelly's character, like she actually, her shoe fell off when she's running. And if you watch her running, her shoe falls off and it's like not good terrain. And she's like, I know I can't stop and I got to go because this is one take. So like, bless her heart for going through that and doing it.
Was that if you need motivation, explosions is a great.
She track
It's
started.
a great way to get there.
Well, again, we know that I'm in Mike's corner, but man, he pulled that off because that grin, like that running enthusiastic grin, was just
it's so great.
It's so perfect. It's so good. And you know, I remember we interviewed John Campiano is from Pet Cemetery documentary,
Yes.
Unearthed and Untold, and he was telling us the amazing story about when they blow up the Pet Cemetery house and how close the actual cast and a lot of the crew were to it, and the heat was affecting the performance and all that. Like, it's not easy to be close to
that. Can't be.
Right. You're blowing up a car.
I don't imagine on an actor's resume. It's like, have you dealt with explosions behind your back?
Right.
Probably not.
Well, when you
Are
can't
you
turn
heat
around,
resistant?
you have to like face. You don't want to turn around to it, and like you. And I didn't want like a big reaction to it. You know what I mean? And
Right.
So and also you're ramping the speed of the film. So the slow motion is not like in post slow motion. Like we're shooting in that way, so it exaggerates their motions and stuff
Sure.
too. So you just have to be so cognizant of that, of like what the actor has to do. So just to kind of make it work. But I will say, for what it's worth, if enough people keep watching Scare Package, and by the way, they could also, if you don't like it, you can put it on Shudder before you go to bed. Let it play overnight. That's fine too. I'm fine with that.
That works?
I have
Totally.
Totally.
Works.
That's
That's
beauty.
awesome.
Totally works.
But either way, if we can get this, then I have, and Cameron, we have a fucking insane sequel idea that is dials everything to an 11, and it opens on Rad Shad's funeral, and all the characters that are like from like the first film all get there, and Zoe and John Michael are there, and they're now maybe dating, but she doesn't really like him, and they're at the funeral, and it's I can't say. Well, I'll say a little more. And then the idea is that all of a sudden, like a TV kind of wheels out, and it's him like giving like his beyond the grave kind of like what is it called? His will. He's talking about his will and everything,
my God.
and he's like talking about horror or whatever. But then all of a sudden, gas comes in the room, and they all get knocked out. And I'll stop from there.
I can't even.
It's so crazy. And
No.
Beverly, I'm gonna have Shutter on all the TVs. Just fucking.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get
Well,
this
listen, I mean, it has to happen. The fact that you had even said this to me, the fact that like Scare Package was the breaking format of Last Drive of
Oh yeah, it totally changed the format of the Last Drive-In.
right. Like, I mean, just for that fact alone, it's already horror historical. Basically.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You can't just drop this here. We got to go.
Well, and we're and I was so happy that John was cool with it. John Bloom, Joe Bob was cool with it, because I was like, can we put the Last Drive-In episode on the Blu-ray? You know, I knew it wouldn't fit on the DVD because we couldn't double disc, but I was like, we could fit it on the Blu-ray. And we came up with we had to be strategic on how to fit it, but because I have so many special features. So we had to find a way to do that. And because that had never happened, like normally these are old movies that have existed for a long time, or even if they're newer films like Mayhem recently or Girl Walks Home Alone at Night or whatever, those have still already been released.
Yep.
So I was like, for this to do this and have we could be really unique. And again, John was just so cool, and just we had such a great experience, and he's such a nice guy and was cool with that. And Shudder was cool, and RLJE, who's like part of AMC. It's really AMC, kind of AMC owns all this,
Yep.
And they were all cool, and it's amazing that like that gets to be on there, and I think it's just a really.
And it was a magical season for Joe Bob himself. I mean, between Scare Package and Hogzilla and all this, like, it was an emotional season. I felt like it was a really, it was a great moment for Scare Package to surface into that. Like, it's really cool.
It made me feel like I was in middle school, and like we rented like the best horror movie we could find. Like that feeling you get was what I had.
Well, you don't know this because we didn't tell you, but we were watching Last Drive-In when we could. We were catching it in real time together. We live close, and our significant others work together, so like we see each other a lot, and so I was over here, and it was one of the few we caught live, and it was literally like an electric moment when you realized you're watching something new, because it just never happened. We didn't even know what to expect with Joe Bob's presentation, which I thought was really cool.
No, it was I mean, Friday, June 12th, I will never forget. I'll never forget it, because it was just such I knew we were going to be on the show, right? Like we know that. They are tape shows,
Right.
They pretend they do a good job of playing it up. He's playing a character,
Yep.
And but we couldn't tell anybody. So only the filmmakers knew, a couple cast members knew, but for the most part, No one knew. So, and June 18th was going to be the release. So people knew that we were going to be on Shudder a week later, but it was like this thing. And I, when I was talking with Shudder, I was like, look, we were originally going to be on the final episode. And I was like, well, and that was going to be the 19th. And I was like, guys, like there's something that could be so special if we did a world premiere. And I talked to John about it. And he's like, that's what he wanted to do too. And at the time, we were going to pair with Adam Green's Hatchet, which is actually what's going to play in like a couple days for the summer thing. But then they moved that to a summer special because they got Hogzilla, and it became this like great thing to do, like Joe Bob in 2 movies, kind of thing. But also with my publicist and stuff, I was like, don't tell anybody Joe Bob's in this. Like, let nobody know, because it'll be such a fun experience.
Right.
And so he played it up. But the night that happened, and we already talked about, says check it out. I'm fucking crying and shit. But my phone, the Twitter app on my phone crashed.
Wow.
My phone went nuts. My phone died from just like everybody like, what the fuck is going on? Because you have to understand, like, this movie, people had known we were making it for so long. And it was just like, we tried to kind of keep a lot of things on the down low until the trailer kind of released. But, we tried to keep everything on the down low for a long time, just to be like, yeah, we're just another anthology, and just like let it play and kind of play it down, and we don't have a lot of money or whatever. But like we kind of knew, because I mean, look, it's like myself and like Alex Uning and Cameron, like we like loved it. We like really enjoyed it. And I'm like, I think this is fucking fun.
And you're your own target audience, so you knew.
Yeah, so I'm like, if I'm enjoying it, and part of it too is because I didn't write all of them, so I like the stuff that I made, I still see, it seems that's harder for me, but there are still like MacGuffin McMuffin. I'm like, fuck yeah, I love it. I don't care. There's those things that happen. But it was, I was like, I really think this could be kind of special. And then the few critics who had seen it were like, guys, this is really good. This is there. So we wanted to keep it like kind of subdued. So that way when it happened, it became this like really fun experience. Because what I had noticed is that as we had played in some festivals, like we had a world premiere that was at Citrus in Spain. And the first night, there were a ton of people there because everybody goes to all the screenings, and it was like, I was like, whoa, this is pretty amazing. And I was kind of blown away, and we had this amazing crowd response. People just even although Joe Bob, they don't know who Joe Bob is in Spain, so like they didn't get it. So like that was like a couple claps, whatever. But I'm like, okay, all right, fine. I'm like, well, we put a lot into that. I hope that works. But it was, but then the second night, I have a video of the line. There was a line wrapped around the building. We had to turn away people. There were like 700 people there. We turned away over like 100 people. It was insane. It sold out. And then we had his first really big review on Slash Film. And they were just like, this is a new cult hit, midnight favorite, all this stuff. And I'm like, guys, I think this movie like might be something, like, I don't know.
Cool.
So it was like a really, really crazy thing. But still, even that, we still tried to like keep it on the download, it's so small, it's not anything, and it is so small. But I was like, let's let people just experience. Let's see if we can recreate that theatrical experience and do it with Joe Bob. And then Shudder like rearrange stuff for us. I mean, Shudder's so fucking amazing. If you don't have a Shudder subscription, I get nothing for saying this, by the way. If you don't have a Shudder subscription and you like horror, you're doing everything wrong. You are failing in life, because it's so great, and also they help out so many filmmakers. They give voices and platforms to films that never would, because this movie maybe would release somewhere else and we get a little bit of release, but it's perfect for Shudder. Like it's just perfect for Shudder.
Well, and it's a compliment to Shudder that it's perfect for Shudder as well, because they've really created something very special now. Like when we basically, this podcast started when Shudder launched. And I remember, because the social media, like that was a thing that I was trying to put together for us, and I was like, what is a really good example? And it was hard to find something that was a good example at that time. And I remember messaging you and being like, this thing called Shudder, haven't heard of this, but man,
I remember the ad. It was that vampire woman. How do you Shudder? And then it would cut to like a bunch of other stuff.
And then it felt like they weren't establishing an identity, but that wasn't a surprise because that's so rare. Almost no one ever does, right? Like, how long did it take Fangoria to become Fangoria? Like, so then, but then they've established this identity, and it's really impressive. Like,
and their fucking summer, like, take Scare Package out of the mix, but like Host, Beach House, La Llorona, by the way, is amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That just came out. Like, it's like there's just so much good shit. And then at the end of the year, you can slum it with the Pale Door in December.
Right. And even backwards, I remember like when every time we at the end of the year or try to recap the year or whatever, inevitably, like I forget what year it was. Revenge was one of my top.
Oh,
three.
Revenge! We
Like,
raved
like
about that movie.
I mean, they've done some amazing stuff. So that's
Yeah.
it's a really. But I actually like the fact that you've had the patience and sort of savvy to downplay the movie even as you were getting excited about it. I feel like it particularly matches Scare Package because that harks from the era where a movie could surprise you because we didn't have the internet, right? So like the fact that this was downplayed and then all of a sudden it just exploded out as a new release on Shudder, like it's
You kind of got that same high.
yeah, exactly.
Ooh, this is great.
It was perfect for this kind of movie,
Right?
That's
Oh, that's awesome. I would say if we end up doing the sequel, it'll be the opposite. It'll be like hype.
He's like
everywhere.
Right.
Well, no. I mean, I think every movie's kind of because if you're going to do a sequel to Scare Package, you're making fun of horror tropes. What happens in horror sequels? You
Right.
go bigger, crazier, and more absurd, and like all of this.
And the marketing is way over the top.
I'll tell you off the air what the title is for this.
I go, cool. I can't. we got to finish. Okay, so
Great talking to you.
follow them on social media.
Peace. Yeah.
Put Shudder on all your screens and just let it play. And
And then pay for the Pale Door.
yeah,
Do not.
That would mean a lot. It seriously would. I mean, it is. I mean, like literally, I put in at one point we lost some of our financing in the movie while we were shooting it. It's how crazy things happen.
Right.
I personally put in every penny that I had into the movie.
Yep.
And people don't have an excuse. Movie theaters have been closed for months. We know you've been storing up that money.
Right. And you're making it in a once in a lifetime transition moment for movie making in general. Like that also is got to be impossibly difficult challenge to add to all the other challenges of making things like these. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's
the last thing before we wrap, I'm just curious, like what from a filmmaker point of view, what do you see out for the next couple of years from the impact of this? Like, is it a lasting impact? Is it something that kind of fades next year?
No, I mean, well, I think we're living in a completely new world. Look, the theatrical windows are changing every day right now. Mm-hmm. And what we've learned is that this PVOD, this premium VOD option is extremely viable. We've also learned that drive-ins are here to stay. That's amazing. Because crazy. I think there's a lot of people who did not know. They go to drive-ins like, I didn't even know these existed. I didn't even know. They're like the people who we were talking about who don't even know that VHS was a thing. Yep. It's the same thing with drive-ins. And they're like, this is kind of cool. I don't have to deal with the people that are talking that are annoying in the theater. That person's in your car. You're like, shut the fuck up. You're in my own car. You know what I mean? That's a different thing. So and look, you're not going to get the sound and the quality is not going to be where it needs to be and that, but that's okay.
And the communal experience you lose. Like some of my favorite memories of theater going is watching. I watched an entire group of adults, of human adults, watch Gone Girl, and that movie ended and the credits rolled, and I just watched like 100 people turn to each other and be like, I need a shower. And it was one of my favorite things that ever happened. Like,
I have two experiences. Like, well, I'll say one tied to the Scare Package. So we played at Telluride, the Telluride Horror Show, and Joe Bob was there, just kind of doing his redneck save Hollywood kind of bit that he was doing the tour for, and nobody knew that Joe Bob was in Scare Package. So we had a sold out screening, or pretty close. Had a lot of people that were there. There was a balcony there that was closed, and it's because it's kind of way up there. And we put Joe Bob and Diana up there and kind of had them kind of hide out. And they were watching the movie. And a couple of people I think saw like, oh, Joe Bob's watching this. That's kind of cool. And as I'm waiting, as people are coming in, I'm looking at people wearing Joe Bob t-shirts and I'm like, you're going to have fun, And so when that moment happened and he comes out, it happened in two places there. And then also Nightmares Fest was a similar situation. People like literally jumped out of their seats and they were just like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? And it just like the energy, it was just so amazing. And I'm sitting in like the second row and I'm just like, here we go.
What a feeling.
And it was the best. It was the best. And then, but I will say I have a very different kind of theatrical experience. So I talk about Fantastic Fest a lot. It's this amazing festival in Austin. And the world premiere of a little action movie that nobody had heard of. Literally, the guy who ran the festival he was talking to me. I was like, I don't know what to see. And he's like, well, there's this other little action film. You should go check it out. I haven't seen it though. Like none of us have seen it. We basically just programmed it because Keanu Reeves is in it. And we're like, okay, cool.
Oh no.
So we go over there and I'm like, well, and I was like, is Keanu here? And they're like, yeah, Keanu's here. I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Then I'm going to go and that's going to be cool. I sat in the front row and we watched John Wick. And that movie, like, and no one had any clue. And like that movie, it happened. And I remember turning around, we're like, what the fuck is this thing? Like, what is this? And then and then Lionsgate, some of the reps from Lionsgate were there and they're like, holy shit, we have something. They pulled it so they couldn't show it again because they didn't want anybody else to see it. They're like, never mind, we've got a hit. And that Q&A, and I still have a picture from it. I saved it on my phone. I've saved it like in the favorites on my roll because it was so, I'm like, this is fucking insane. Like, because like just the head tap, like I was like blown away by John Wick in person.
Yep.
And it's so much fun. So like that was just one of those like I had no idea. And then Green Room. When I saw Green Room the first time, that was a movie too that I was like, whoa, I'm seeing a next level. And I kind of know Jeremy Saulnier kind of, vaguely. I know Macon a little bit better. One of the stars.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen Blue Ruin. I knew how good Blue Ruin was, so I knew it would be good. But Green Room, fucking knocked.
We did a whole episode on Green Room because I'm obsessed with not just character actors, but I'm obsessed with the idea that a line delivery can just echo like through forever, through infinity. Like,
are you going to say? Can I interrupt you because I'm going to guess what line you're going to say? Is your line
scary at night?
Yeah, I was going to say you were. It's funny. You were so much scarier at night.
Yes, that's the line I was going to say. It's not just how genius the line is and how genius the entire movie is just the prelude to the delivery of the line, but also the way, the cadence, the delivery of how he says the line. It's just
and the look on Patrick Stewart. It's the acting too. It's his look and the realization of like I am this old feeble man. Yep. And I don't have this like army behind me of red laces and what that means.
Right.
And it's so, and also it's just like a perfect analogy to how we can counter hate. Mm-hmm. And that hate exists and you can stand up to it. And it's so scary. And these people are there, but we are more than them. And these people that want to do this shit, we are more than them. We can overtake them. This can happen. And you have to stand up to them and don't be afraid of what it is they're doing. And there's just something, and I will say my favorite, I mean, so I talk about that part. I mean, I think that should be talked about in screenwriting classes about what that line means and how it does that. Mm-hmm. And then also how the setup and payoff of the Desert Island Band stuff and like what happens with that. I think it's just also so genius and why they end on that.
Yep.
But my favorite moment in the entire film is there's the man who has the attack dogs and the one gets loose because the speakers go off and it's running and they keep, and God, Jeremy's just like, I look up to him as a filmmaker so much because he's just so great at the way he paces this. And you're like, have all this crazy shit going on. You cut, there's a dog that's going. Yeah. And you're not thinking anything of it. And you cut, dog that's going. And that's like slowly happening in the background. And then at the very end, this whole culmination, and the dog owner, dies.
Yep.
And he's laying there. And then this dog, this vicious fucking attack dog that can kill you. That's all this. Comes and just lays down on his neck. And it's this perfect analogy of how hate is learned and taught. And this dog is a killer. And these people that are being so hateful, like that you've seen in the movie that are about these right-wing, completely crazy, like, when I say right-wing, I mean like, overtly far right,
supremacist,
kind of supremacist side. Yeah. Sorry, not like painting in a broad stroke there. But in that level, and you look at where that is, and it's like that level of hate is taught. Yep. That dog was taught to be a killer, but in his core, he just wants to lay down because all he wants to do is love the person who taught him that. Right. He's learned this, and all he wants to do is show that, and that is fucking perfect filmmaking.
Yep.
And I'm chasing.
And the person being killed, it's like they pulled the dog's hate battery out.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Like that, which is just this amazing moment of, and the whole film is filled with those moments, that showdown in the drug like basement, kind of just the way all that plays out. is pitch perfect in every. It's just
So
incredible.
good.
It's just an incredible film. So yeah, I mean, we did an entire episode on it because it blew my mind
So
when
good.
when I first saw it, and
Well, if
that's
you
not
ever
even
wanna
talking
talk-
about the music and all that.
Oh yeah, there's so much. If you ever if you ever want to do a Paul Thomas Anderson film and you want to have me on, I'll come and talk PTA with you anytime. So
It is on. He's one
I
of
mean,
my.
We'll put it in the books.
Put it in the books.
Yeah.
It's amazing. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. This is an amazing. Go check out
This is so
everything
great.
he does.
I know. I'm so excited.
thank you so much.
All right, I hope you boils and ghouls enjoyed that interview as much as we had talking to him. Make sure to go check out the show notes for some more short horror films, and check out the Scare Package merch. They got some really cool stuff in there, and the Blu-ray will be coming out later in October, and if you can buy it straight from them, you absolutely should. And if you love Scare Package as much as we did, let us know with an iTunes review. You know the drill. You know the drill. We always end these on the iTunes review. And until next time, stay scary, watch a bunch of horror movies. Bye, guys.